Okay, I have a bone to pick with the horror community. I'm all for the interest, passion, and dedication many fans have to their favorite genre. Hell, I'm deep in it myself. But from what I see on a regular basis, the community tends to overwhelmingly favor slasher movies and their iconic villains over all else. I swear, almost every day on Twitter and Instagram, it's just everyone playing Fuck, Marry, Kill with Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger. I mention this because it seems like films like 2004's The Grudge, the massive $110 million hit that was everywhere for a time, has seemingly vanished from the cultural conversation. Maybe it's because parodies and lackluster sequels watered down the brand to the point of irrelevance, but come on, shame on all of you. The Grudge remains a fantastic spooky movie with some intense visuals that are unrivaled even now. How does this film not have the cultural horror footprint it deserves? The Grudge is a remake of a Japanese film done in a smart, respectful way that isn't just changing everything to be American and that's that. Here's producer Sam Raimi explaining why he thinks the remake was necessary.
The reason I was so attracted to this film was because Takashi Shimizu is such a great, masterful filmmaker, and I wanted to help bring his work to the rest of the world. You know, there's a large American audience that won't go see a film made in Japan starring Japanese actors in Japanese. I felt this was such a great story that the rest of the world should see it. And so that's what led to the decision to remake it with American actors in English so that the American audience could appreciate it.
Look, he's not wrong. Foreign films are a tough sell now, let alone 15 years ago. But what the English language version of The Grudge does is very smart. First off, the original film's writer-director directs this version as well. While it's not completely unheard of, it's still very, very rare. This allows for the tone and style of the original to mostly remain intact, and the production is fully supportive of that. It still takes place entirely in Japan, and while the main characters are American, their presence there makes sense and is used to great effect in the script. Notably, Clea Duvall's character has a sequence that realistically conveys being absolutely lost in a place where you don't know the language and culture. You can immediately place yourself in her shoes, and the feeling can be quite frightening. Not saying Japan is frightening, just, the potential helplessness of getting lost in a strange land, etc. I mean, look, maybe it is problematic, I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem as egregious as just putting white people / Scarlett Johansson in every movie where they don't necessarily fit, but I guess ultimately, this isn't up to me to decide. Anyway, The Grudge is a haunted house story with a bit more going on than the usual one of these things. It starts with Bill Pullman not saying a word and then committing suicide, and from there the film is off and running, told in a non-linear, chapter-like structure that's very appealing. Not once do you ever feel like, wait, who's this? Where in the timeline am I? Why am I watching this scene? Everything fits perfectly and feels right. It's really quite impressive. One of my complaints about haunted house movies is the amount of childish nonsense the ghosts do before finally getting to the point, and that's not the case with The Grudge. These ghosts are not screwing around. And by the end of the film, it all mostly makes sense. Mostly. There are a few point A to point B things that aren't explained well enough to my liking, but I don't need it all spelled out. I'm on board. The Grudge has style and substance and scares, and that's a terrific combination for a horror movie. The cast works, the locale works, it all just works. If you've seen The Grudge, you need to revisit it, and if you haven't, come on. I want to leave you with my favorite part of The Grudge, which is when the film's grizzled police detective gets killed off. And it's notable because he is so pissed that he is getting drowned by a ghost. It's delightful, in a really messed up way. Watch The Grudge.
Just when I thought I could not be stopped, when my chance came to be king, the ghosts of my life blew wilder than the wind.
Let's talk about the internet. The internet is terrible now more than ever. Sure, there is some good on the internet, this show for example, but overall it's nothing but trouble. Hollywood has tried to capitalize on the awfulness of the internet over the years, usually in hilarious and inaccurate ways. This month, the internet will be a factor in several movies I'm going to cover, and today I'll be taking a look at two such cautionary tales. Dee Snider's Strangeland came out in 1998, during the heyday of America Online and the simplicity of chat rooms. Remember chat rooms? Anyway, chat rooms are bad. Very bad. Dee Snider plays Captain Howdy, which is an Exorcist reference if you're keeping score. Captain Howdy likes chat rooms. He likes going into chat rooms and pretending he's someone he's not in order to lure young people to his house. Once there, he tortures them with extreme body modifications and endless fucking speeches.
We live in a world filled with people wearing middle-aged bodies, yet they stumble to a crawl with their childlike minds.
Seriously, Captain Howdy talks way too much. The cops are on the case, including Woody Harrelson's brother, and Ted Levine here, who is totally clueless as to how the internet works, leading to much hilarity. Gotta admit, it's interesting to see Ted Levine playing against type as a good guy. Also, this isn't actually Ted Levine, which confused the hell out of me when the end credits rolled. It's actually an actor named Kevin Gage. But, I mean, I'm watching Ted Levine walk through this nightclub with a WTF expression on his face, and I'm like, this is some brilliant acting, because come on, Ted Levine, you've seen some shit, this shouldn't surprise you. But again, it's not Ted Levine. I was really thrown by this, in case you couldn't tell. Howdy is caught at the end of the first act, but because this is a 90s movie that pretends that progressive psychiatrists wield all the power in the universe, he's sent to a hospital, rehabilitated, and then released. In all honesty though, the rehabilitation seems to have worked, except that he still talks too much. However, the townsfolk are having none of this, and when a mob forms to give Captain Howdy some much-needed local justice, it's led by Robert Englund. And it should be said that casting Freddy Krueger as the guy who leads a mob to destroy a local serial killer is just a little too on the nose. Essentially, they bully and torture Captain Howdy into becoming Captain Howdy again, and the cops have to deal with it, again. Strangeland is, well, strange. It's directed decently, but without any sense of style, which is what something like this desperately needed. All of the visuals are very straightforward and matter-of-fact. The script, written by Snyder himself, gives the villain entirely too much to say, which negates any menace the character is supposed to have. They've made up Snyder to be a pretty scary-looking dude, but then he starts waxing philosophical about this and that, and you realize he's just an idiot wearing big boots. The structure, though, is its weakest point. You don't need the whole catch-and-release part of the plot, at all, but Ted Levine is pretty good here, even though it's not Ted Levine. Now, we move forward on the internet timeline to 2002, when no one knew what the hell to do exactly with the internet. Case in point, Fear.com, a movie that, unlike Strangeland, is dripping with attempts at style, but none of them matter. It's also a movie that has no idea how the internet works. However, it wants us to know that if you use the internet, you'll die 48 hours later. Yeah, it sounds like The Ring. Also feels like Seven, as whatever city we're in is always dark, it's always raining, and no one uses overhead lights. That's not a shot at Seven, mind you, that movie rules, it's just that Fear.com apes it, and it doesn't do this movie any favors. Honestly, I don't want to say that much about Fear.com because I hate it. And I realize that I've always hated it, as this is the second or third time where I've gotten to the exact same place and tuned right out. My brain decides, correctly, that it doesn't matter what else happens, it's never going to get any better. It starts terribly and never recovers. But if you desperately need to know what it's about, fine. Basically, there's a website called fear.com.com, which, God, that's stupid. And it's because they couldn't get the rights to regular-ass Fear.com when they started production. If you go to fear.com.com, stuff happens. And you get hit in the eye with a beach ball or something, and then an albino child will eventually kill you with bugs or cars, or jerky internet flash animation, or whatever spooky shit came up in the random horror generator they ran this script through. This is all because Stephen Ray killed someone, and it's one of those movies where the ghost wants you to solve its ghost mystery, or else it'll keep ghost killing. It's goddamn trash. That's pretty much this movie in a nutshell. It's bargain basement stupidity. It's dumb Nine Inch Nails knockoff music video bullshit. It has the nerve to cast both Udo Kier and Jeffrey Combs and waste both of them in meaningless roles. Usually I'm of the opinion that some Udo Kier or Jeffrey Combs is better than none at all, but fuck off. .com.
If that's your best won't do.
As you know, I like a lot of horror things, but one aspect of spooky season that I don't have any fondness for are the haunted houses and theme park mazes that pop up every fall. I don't see the appeal, and I never have. I'm not knocking them, they're just not my bag. If you want to get harassed by a person who might be slightly off and has no respect for your personal space, try riding a city bus, it's a lot cheaper. The Houses October Built, which is a found footage film based upon a documentary by the same name made by the same filmmakers, features a group of friends who decide to very briefly travel around part of the country in a massive RV, looking for the best rural haunts. Footage from that documentary makes its way into this film as transitions between scenes. Sometimes I just grab a movie off a stack of discs and throw it in without even knowing what it's about, and that's the case with The Houses October Built. I admit that when it revealed itself to be a found footage thing, I immediately started to grumble, for reasons I don't even understand, and I will blame the internet for conditioning me to do so. I mean, I like a lot of found footage movies and don't have this hatred for them that so many people seem to have. The Last Broadcast, The Blair Witch Project, Cloverfield, these are some things I really love. The problems with there being so many found footage films is the weird pattern they all seem to fall into. It's just a bunch of random footage of nothing important at the beginning just to let you spend some time with these people who are going to die basically. Then some spooky things are sprinkled in, and then there's the third act total insanity. I know that basically describes your classic 3-act screenplay structure, but found footage films are just so bad at it, because they're limited to what else might be on the tape or memory card that gets found. I mean, I love Cloverfield, and I know a lot of you do too, but think about that first 25 to 30 minutes of the movie, where it's just a goddamn party with TJ Miller babbling the whole time. It sucks. And don't get me started with people filming things they would never actually film. They'd have dropped the camera an hour ago and never looked back. Cloverfield is especially bad about this. Also, if we're to buy into the premise of this subgenre, who the hell is editing together all these snuff films and releasing them for people to pay for? There should be congressional hearings. Anyway, the crux of these characters' journey is that they're looking for the most extreme haunt they can find, hoping to come across something so completely off the radar that they need passwords and a series of clues to be able to get into them. Problem is that the haunt finds them first and harasses them, and keeps harassing them. And yet they continue their journey. No one in this group seems very enthralled with this journey, or about finding the thing they're all supposedly there to find, or even about each other, really. We're supposed to accept that they're all doing this to support their one friend who is really into the idea, except he never displays any kind of joy about the potential discovery. So you end up with 5 or 6 people in an RV having an awful time while being harassed by dumb hillbilly bullshit. It was making me actively angry to sit through, and by the time the film gets to the end, I'm left with the thought, what was the point of that? The way this wraps up can go screw. There's potential in something like The Houses October Built, but its flow is so disjointed and uninteresting, and you cannot build tension with just whoever is holding the camera saying, "What is that? What the hell is that?" over and over and over again to fill the silences. It's an interesting idea, but poorly executed. It's worth noting that the original full-length documentary is an extra on the Blu-ray, and is possibly a superior product to the feature it supports. When I noticed there was a second one of these and saw that the same cast was in it, I did a bit of a double take and wondered if they were doing a Return of the Living Dead 2 thing, where it's the same actors as different characters in a similar scenario. Nope, it's a continuation, and the very first thing it does is completely undo the ending of the first film. Now, I can't go any further here without spoiling the end of the first movie, so I'm warning you that spoilers are coming. Right now. So the only woman in the group was buried alive at the end of the first film, and presumably died. That's what the snuff film ending of that movie led you to believe, anyway. Here we learn that the people doing it were streaming it all on the internet. The cops were called, and they arrived at the last minute, saving her. The rest of her group were saved as well. Sometime later, the group wants to go back out and do more extreme haunt searching because now they're famous and have sponsors. But it'll only work if she comes along.
Right.
These are just different kinds of haunts. It's not any of the extreme shit. None of that.
That's what you
They're not
say?
even
I ended up in the ground last time, guys. I'm not doing it.
We had no idea that was going to happen. You know that.
Okay, well, you have no idea what's going to happen this time either, so I'm not going to do it.
We have to have you.
I'm not doing it.
She, of course, has been completely traumatized by this and wants no part of it, so her friends bully her into just getting over it and coming with them. She absolutely should not get over it and go back out with these monsters, but because movie, she eventually relents and joins them on their current tour. From there, nothing happens for almost the entirety of the film. They go to haunts and they film them. They have a drone now, so there's lots of flyover footage. That's it. It's a travelogue. They go to zombie runs and zombie pub crawls and have eating contests with Kobayashi, and it's all them just having fun while we're forced to watch. Long story short, they get sucked into another extreme haunt, but it's revealed that not only are all the dudes behind this whole thing this time, they were behind the whole thing in the first film as well. tormenting their female friend for fame and notoriety and then making her feel guilty for being traumatized by it. They were mad that their big ending was undone the first time around, so they decided to try it again. And somehow the movie doesn't end with her murdering all of them. She'd be justified, because it's repellent. Fuck off. This second film makes the first seem good in comparison, and I cannot stand the first film. That's how bad this is and how much I hate the people in it. What an utterly disgusting concept. I appreciate how they kind of made it feasible for this second film to exist based on what we saw in the ending of the first one, but holy god. Just go to your haunts and make your documentaries. This attempt at telling a compelling narrative along with your vacation videos sucks. The 1950s Bert I. Gordon cult classic Earth vs. the Spider has somehow been given the branding of bad movie over time, which I'll never understand since it's totally fine. Sure, it's just a regular-sized spider composited into scenes to make it look big, and that's quite easy to spot even back then, but other than that, the story is fine, the acting is more than fine, and it's fun. It's a fun 1950s creature feature. I mean, it's not Touch of Evil, but it's fine. If you've never seen it, here's a quick synopsis, because I know how hard it is for you kids to watch the old movies these days, what with your 8-tracks and your Mazdas and what have you. Anyway, two 30-year-old teenagers go looking for a missing parent and stumble upon the lair of a giant-ass spider. They tell the authorities, who are like, sure kids, whatever, but in a refreshing plot twist, they're also immediately accosted by the spider, and then hatch a plan to kill it. None of that you damn kids in your comic books nonsense. Everyone's seen the spider, and they all want it dead. Along the way, there's lots of theremin music and plugs for other Bert I. Gordon movies. If I have any complaints about the film, it's that the title Earth vs. the Spider is misleading. It's more like Small Town USA vs. the Spider, if that. Otherwise, it's fun and brisk at only 73 minutes. I'm not rating it because I've seen it a million times, and half of those were probably the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version, but you should check it out, especially if you're into the 1950s era of horror and sci-fi. Now, I told you about all that in order to talk about today's actual movie. In 2001, the pay cable channel Cinemax started airing a series of what would ultimately be 5 movies based on old American International films like Earth vs. the Spider. The series was even branded as Creature Features and was later released on DVD. This newest Earth vs. the Spider features the weirdest trio of producers. Also, as I sadly came to learn while watching it, it's not a remake of the 1950s version at all. Not even remotely. Quentin, a meek security guard and superfan of the comic book hero Arachnid Avenger, injects himself with some radioactive spider juice, which transforms him into a crime-fighting Spider-Man. He uses his powers to stop some random crimes and to protect his neighbor lady, and also to kill the local serial killer. But the transformation continues, eventually turning him into a full-fledged Spider-Man. Dan Aykroyd is on hand, playing a wimpy cop who gets involved in these events late in the game. He was initially on the serial killer case, but keeps sniffing around because the script tells him to. He also has a terrible wife, played by Teresa Russell, and a subplot that pretty much goes nowhere. John Cho is also in the film as a comic book store owner with an unnecessary accent.
Dog, this issue is mint. Do not spooge on this one.
Oh, don't worry.
Forget it. I'm giving this pig a double bagger and a comic condom.
This 2001 version of Earth vs. the Spider is even less relevant to its title than the original, as it's basically Dan Aykroyd versus the Spider-Man in a basement. I was curious to see a pay cable remake of the original movie and was wholly let down as I realized this was only using the title and was just going to be a ripoff of The Fly. I mean, I can get wanting to use the branding of one thing to try and do your own thing, but this is just a ripoff of The Fly with some Marvel Spider-Man overtones in the early stages. Even Dan Aykroyd is not in any way giving anyone what they want here. He's just a dude. He brings nothing to the film but his name. Stan Winston's practical effects are kinda neat when they aren't covered with a bunch of hideous CGI, but that's not nearly enough to save this thing. I had planned to cover all 5 creature features this season, but after this incredibly disappointing start, I'm not sure I want to go through with that. Still might, but we'll see. Maybe things will be different now that I know ahead of time they're going to be a disappointment.
Dude, the hell happened to you?
I've been pretty busy.
Nah. I mean, what the hell happened to you? You're here with this whole new vibe. Finally get laid.
Better than laid.
What? You get laid by Lara Croft.
No.
Ugh, good lord, I'm so sorry they made you do that, dude. The town of Barrow, Alaska is saying goodbye to the sun as their month-long period of darkness is set to begin. They're also saying goodbye to each other as most of the citizens leave, unwilling to put up with a month of nighttime. This leaves only about a fourth of the townspeople to take care of city business. One person staying behind is Sheriff McLawdog here, who is currently breaking up with his special lady. She does not make it out of town in time before the airport shuts down. I bet if I wonder what Josh Hartnett's been up to lately, it'll turn out that he's been on some cable series I've never even considered watching for the last 10 years. Oh, yeah, Penny Dreadful, there it is. I'm glad he's working, or was working. Anyway, while the town prepares, we see a dude who has clearly come from that rickety-ass pirate ship back there. He heads towards town, and that's when things start to get weird. The first bit of business in this movie as a result? A bunch of brutal dog murders. Thanks, movie! Also, the police find a pile of burned cell and satellite phones. Later, they discover that the local helicopter has been destroyed. Soon after, the weather service, or local ISP, or whatever this dude is in charge of, gets knocked out, and then wham! Vampires. Vampires. The dude who came to town turns out to be Ben Foster, who is the weirdest vampire hype man, mostly because he's being Ben Foster.
Shut up.
Ignore him, Jake.
You can feel it. That cold ain't the weather. That's death approaching.
The squad of vampires, and there are a lot of vampires, so many in fact that as vampires get dispatched throughout the film, it doesn't seem to diminish their numbers, are led by Danny Huston, who played Major Stryker in one of the standalone Wolverine movies. And while he's no stranger to playing villains, I'm not sure he's the right choice as the villain of these old-timey looking bunch of Quaker vampires. Quampires. The initial wave of rampaging vampires makes the movie feel a lot like Gremlins, as the sleepy little wintry town is getting decimated by monsters. After it settles in on a handful of survivors, it takes on a Night of the Living Dead vibe, except taking place over the course of a month. Hence the title. The timeline ends up being the film's main flaws. It feels like it's cutting corners on things we probably should be seeing. But then again, it also seems like 8 days will pass and the characters are all in the same location, in the same positions, having not done a single thing in all that time. The film skips over huge chunks of the month, and it would have been more effective, I think, had it focused on at least something, anything, each day. It seems super obvious during one of the opening scenes as to how the vampires are going to get dispatched, because when you see the thing you're like, oh okay, I've seen a movie, but there's a decent swerve with that as they only use the big metal grinder to take out one of the many secondary vampires. Instead, the movie has some goddamn balls to go where it ends up going, despite the final blow that kills the head vampire being a head-scratching special effect. I can only imagine the high-fiving that was going on when the idea for the comic that eventually became this movie came to be. It's such a simple idea, and hundreds of writers had to have been kicking themselves for not coming up with it. Hell, I'm mad at myself for not thinking of it. If you buy into the premise, you'll be completely fine with this film. 30 Days of Night is impressive despite its flaws. I didn't think so highly of it when it first came out, but I think time has been kind to it. Sure, there's a bunch of questionable CG and some serious overusage of the shaky cam bullshit, but there's some powerful imagery here as well. Plus, it's great to watch when it's 120 degrees outside like it is here now. Maybe I need to move to Barrow. It seems like there'd be a bunch of job openings. In some circles, 1995's Mind Ripper is also known as The Hills Have Eyes 3. Hell, it's even called that on the Blu-ray cover. It's not that. It's not remotely that. The film is presented by Wes Craven and is written and produced by Craven's son Jonathan, but other than that, no connection to The Hills Have Eyes. None. I suppose if you really want to reach, you could say this is taking place in the same deserty area as The Hills Have Eyes, but even if it was, it means nothing to this film. Nothing. Anyway, let's talk about what Mind Ripper actually is, besides not good. Scientists find a dying man in the desert, and they inject him with an experimental virus to keep him alive. 6 months later, he awakens after being given even more experimental drugs. Now he's a murder monster, which on one hand is good because they were trying to make a murder monster, but on the other hand is bad because of course they have no way to control this thing. Soon the dude everyone is calling Thor is ripping out their minds. Lance Henriksen was a scientist at this facility, but left a few months before this incident because he was disgusted by the project that he literally helped facilitate. When shit gets real though, he's called in to help out. This means he has to cancel a camping trip with his kids Giovanni Ribisi and Natasha Gregson Wagner. But for some stupid reason, they volunteer to come along, and for some stupider reason, he lets them. Oh yeah, Wagner's boyfriend is along for the ride as well.
Is there anything that doesn't make you horny?
My mother's douche.
Charming. Later in the film, it suddenly hits him how stupid an idea it was to bring them along. Meanwhile, the super soldier has puked up a bug, I think. It's not something that ever comes into play. Then he develops a weird tongue penis. Eventually, he starts using this new tongue penis to murder people. Basically, this is a huge underground facility that two different groups of people are now wandering around in while maybe being stalked by a hunky Mind Ripper and his tongue penis. Also, for some reason, I think that Giovanni Ribisi, in his first movie here, is being allowed to improvise his own dialogue.
You know what I think is really weird? Let me just bounce this off you really quickly. Siegfried has this like heroic. No, seriously. Siegfried has this heroic name, you know, Siegfried, and Roy has this like, you know, country western singer name. I mean, I don't know what it is, you know. Roland. What do you think about Roland? Siegfried and Roland.
Enough, man. Just enough.
No, I'm serious. We should call their agent.
You're so messed up.
Where's my angry young man?
Hey! All right.
Oh, man, that hurt.
Anyway, Mind Ripper is bad. The acting is bad, the situations are bad, and the plot is generic and nonsensical. It's cheap, lousy, and a waste of time. Lance Henriksen regrets making it. Others won't even talk about it, and that says a lot. Also, according to the IMDb, this was the beginning of the, quote, modern Bulgarian film industry, which now makes me dislike the film even more. I've got a little bit of extra time here, so let's talk about another movie where people wander around underground bunkers while being chased by a thing. It's 1996's Alien Terminator, which has a great title, but because it's a late 90s New Horizons movie, it doesn't have a chance of living up to it. 6 people have been living underground for 2 years doing science, and they've got 1 day left before they can return to the surface. The problem, though, is that one of them has been doing massive amounts of crystal meth and virtual reality like an asshole. He ends up injecting a rat with experimental monster juice, and from there, the juice is loose. The rat ends up biting one of the dudes and transfers the monster juice to him, which leads to the most shameless ripoff of the chestburster scene from Alien.
I'm gonna go watch the sunset at the beach.
I think I'm gonna head out on the town, find some temporary love. It's been a long, lonely time down here.
Oh, well, we want to in the name of science.
What about you, Coach?
Oh, Coach!
But then, of course, the movie is so cheap, it can't even pay it off properly. With a name like Alien Terminator, I figured it was going to be a ripoff of both those films, and I was here for that, but it's only Alien. The Terminator part of the title is meaningless. It's a ripoff of Alien by way of creepazoids and then run through the poorly lit Roger Corman New Horizons filter. If you really need to see co-star Lisa Boyle topless, there are better places. Like, say, the movie Midnight Tease, which I reviewed back in season 10. A shower scene from that film has been spliced into this one to add more Lisa Boyle nudity, thanks to her refusing to do a Humanoids from the Deep-esque rape scene before her character got killed off. Good on you, Lisa Boyle. Good on you.
Popcorn, you know what I'm saying? Some pop, yeah, dress it all up, make it fine. Right. Yeah, get some pop.
Mirrors. You look in them, you see stuff, you adjust stuff, you go about your day. But in horror movies, mirrors can be bad. They crack, they bleed, they grab you, they pull you into another dimension, you know, the usual. 1990's Mirror Mirror starts with one lady stabbing another lady to death a few decades in the past. They appear to be sisters, or were until one died from the stabbing. Her attacker doesn't want the mirror in the room to see this, but the mirror wants to see this. Years later, the mirror is discovered by Yvonne DiCarlo and a lesser-known Mary Gross character. The house is then sold to weirdo Karen Black and her Winona Ryder Beetlejuice daughter. The mirror, however, remains inside. Megan is played by an actress named Rainbow Harvest, which sounds fake, of course, but apparently that's her real name. She worked somewhat steadily for a few years and then completely disappeared from Hollywood. Those kinds of stories always fascinate me, but there's very little info out there about Rainbow, so we'll leave it at that. Megan is understandably going to have problems fitting in at school based on how she dresses and the fact that it's 1990 and the world isn't ready for hot goths yet, since we've got 4 more years until The Crow. And yep, she proceeds to have problems fitting in at school.
Sorry, I'm late.
She's befriended by Nikki, who is running for student council president against a mean girl, and by Nikki's boyfriend Ron, sort of. Also, Mean Girl's boyfriend seems to be into Megan, which is odd for a movie like this, that the bitchy girl's boyfriend is sympathetic and the nice girl's boyfriend is pretty much an asshole. This will absolutely be justified later, however. Meanwhile, back at the house, the spooky mirror kills a dog for peeing on it, which results in pet mortuary dude William Sanderson showing up. You think this might be venturing into some kind of Pet Cemetery ripoff territory, but no, he just has dinner with the family one night, which pisses off the mirror and it produces a bunch of flies. Maybe the mirror is from that Amityville 4 yard sale. At one point, Megan muses out loud that she wishes her dad was still alive, and that night the mirror kinda grants her wish, but of course in the most horrific way possible.
He couldn't be here. Dead people never come back.
Around this time, Yvonne DiCarlo, who has been reading up on spooky mirrors for some reason, realizes that this mirror in particular is bad news. She notes that demons use the mirror to do your bidding, and then after gaining your confidence, they can invade our world and spread more evil. Megan has been facing more and more bullying at school to an almost absurd level at times. The mirror starts helping her exact some revenge against her bullies. Trivial stuff at first, but after, she pretty much, literally has sex with the mirror. The revenge escalates to murder, and when Nikki is not on board with whatever the hell is happening, Megan turns on her too. After a wild finale, you're left with the old saying that you shouldn't make a deal with demonic mirrors, no matter how much your life sucks. That's a saying, right? While Mirror Mirror isn't anything groundbreaking, 1981's Evil Speak immediately came to mind as I watched this, it's got enough going on to deserve a recommendation, especially considering it's currently a little-seen horror film in a world where horror nerds purport to having seen everything. The film is a little too reliant on extended slow-motion sequences, and it's certainly got a creepy vibe throughout, even without the mirror fucking, and the performances are mostly solid. As I watched this, I realized my rating was going to depend on how the film wrapped up, as it's one of those scenarios that's going to be completely unexplainable to any kind of authority. It almost pulls it off with a bizarre twist in the last few minutes that mostly works, but not completely. A for effort, though. It was a good try. Also, not only does the dog die, but there are 2 dogs in this, and they both die. That's 2 dog kills. That's a rarity. The sound design for whenever the mirror is being evil is pretty good, despite just being a voice run through a million audio filters. The music, composed by the film's producer, who was also the special effects supervisor, is decent, although a bit silly. I mean, menacing kettle drums are an interesting choice.
I can control it now. Megan, what's happening? See? Control. I can stop it.
It's also worth noting that Mirror Mirror was not only directed by a woman and written by 2 women, but also that the main characters are all women, as the men just end up being fodder for the evil mirror. The 2 boyfriends? Dead. William Sanderson is just a minor character who briefly dates Karen Black, and the only other male character is really just a very laid-back Ned Ryerson as a teacher at the high school. For 1990, this is kind of remarkable. Ladies, doing stuff. In the 90s. Yeah.
Nikki, things are gonna be different from now on.
The Grudge firmly established its rules, where if you come in contact with the haunted house, the evil attaches itself to you and can haunt you no matter where you are. Before hitting play on The Grudge 2 for the first time, my mind immediately went to the 2 characters who survived the initial film seemingly unscathed: the real estate agent who gets Clea Duvall's family to move into the house, and the main detective's partner. Neither character is mentioned in The Grudge 2. After a nice bit of business with the Columbia logo, and then a scene with Jennifer Beals, which I'll talk about in a few, we are introduced to 3 schoolgirls who are going into the spooky house, all while explaining way too much about what's going on. Anyway, they've all been in the house now, so they're doomed. Then, somehow, Sarah Michelle Gellar is still alive, despite her apparent demise during the murky last scene in the previous film. Her mother sends her younger sister, Amber Tamblyn, to Japan to help. But since they then kill off Sarah Michelle Gellar moments later, the sister has to just kinda hang around and investigate. This, of course, takes her into the house, and she gets grudged. Then there's that Jennifer Beals scene I mentioned earlier. That's taking place in Chicago. It's a third plotline we're following in this film, which is again doing the non-linear chapter-esque storytelling, but in this case you're often left wondering, why is any of this happening? Who are these people? Why am I watching this stuff? And when the reveal comes as to why you're supposed to be invested in it, you're like, yeah, I figured that out 30 minutes ago, I don't care. The innocence of the victims in The Grudge was one of its strongest qualities. In this sequel, we're supposed to hate certain characters who end up eating it, and that's just an entirely different vibe. The film is just setting up meaningless fodder, and it becomes similar to everything else that's out there. I hinted at this in my review of the first film, but since it's happened again in the second, I'm gonna go ahead and mention it. Who is taping up this door? The ghosts? Is it ghost tape? This seems like a very weird ruse for ghosts who can literally be anywhere in this house and pretty much do anything. In the first film, it seemed like a creepy bit of business that you then don't think about much because the movie is just going and going. But now that it happens again here, I just have to wonder what the hell the deal is. It pains me to say it, but The Grudge 2 just doesn't work. Everything about it feels way off, and that's despite what seems like the entire creative crew returning to make it. It's not a remake of the second Japanese film, although there are elements of those original films here. Instead, it tries to expand the universe somewhat, but it does it in a very watered down, I don't care about this direction at all kind of way. The first film was so strong, and this one doesn't come close to that. I felt like I was giving it every possible chance, and it just let me down every step of the way. Despite not being as big of a hit as the first film, The Grudge 2 still managed to whip up $70 million, so it's no surprise that a third film was eventually made. What is surprising though is that it was released straight to video and was directed by a dude from the UK. Also, while the first two were rated PG-13 and had unrated cuts later on DVD, The Grudge 3 is just straight up rated R. Weird how freeing it is not to have to worry about box office. The first thing you notice about The Grudge 3 is that they've added an addendum to the title cards that played at the start of the first two films. This tells you exactly what you're in for and tells me exactly all I need to know. This is gonna suck. The kid survivor from the last film is the first person we see, but he's not long for this movie. He's being treated by Dr. Shawnee Smith, and I'm perplexed seeing Shawnee Smith playing a normal person. Anyway, Chicago is the focus now, except that Chicago is now Bulgaria, and the script is entirely linear. Also, the ghost cast has been replaced with new actors, and they don't feel right at all. Nothing does. It's all off and wrong and barely feels like this is even the same franchise. It drags and goes in directions you don't care about, and in the end, it's rather remarkable how hard this crashes the series. It tries to make a Mr. Potato Head scary at one point. It's not. And Counselor Troy is in this for a hot minute until she's not. It's all too brightly lit, which makes everything look silly instead of spooky. It's just lousy. But yeah, Uncle Creepy likes it, so what the hell do I know? Look, don't hold these two sequels against the original English language version of The Grudge. That film is still great. You can just pretend that they never made these. Although, it'll be interesting to see what the 2020 version of The Grudge is going to be. Yep, that's coming soon. Should be interesting, but watch the original The Grudge. I implore you, it's so good. Social butterfly Laura has a lot of Facebook friends, a loyal inner circle, and will speak to you in the school cafeteria if you say hi to her.
Hey, how are you?
One day she befriends a spooky girl on Facebook, feeling bad for her because she literally has 0 friends. Spooky girl overreacts to this, of course, and becomes a Stalky McStalkerson. Her obsession goes entirely too far, and Laura does the quite reasonable thing of unfriending her. This goes badly, as Spooky Girl subsequently commits suicide. Soon after, it seems as though Laura's Facebook page gets hacked, as someone is posting awful things on her timeline. As her friends start unfollowing her as a result, Laura realizes that Spooky Girl is now haunting her social media, and soon is able to start ghost murdering all of her friends, promising to show her what it's like to be entirely alone. On one hand, I could kind of gloss over things in this movie and say, well, that's an okay horror flick, I suppose. I've seen worse. There are things here that I appreciate, like how they're using the sound old cell phones made when they were too close to a speaker in order to indicate that spooky things are about to happen. Also, the number of times they try to make a finger touching a trackpad seem dramatic is very amusing to me. And I should note the sound design in the film, because any potential scare is punctuated with the loudest cacophony of noise you've ever heard. It's like someone punching an entire orchestra at once. But if you give Friend Request any kind of critical thought, even for a moment, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, of course, none of it makes sense, the premise is absurd, but it doesn't even seem to bother to make sense within that absurd universe it's created. I'll explain. So, while younger, the spooky girl managed to lure 2 bullies to a place where I guess she was able to command wasps or something to eat their faces off. At this point in her backstory, she's just a child, not a supernatural being or anything. The 2 faceless kids are then part of her spooky army once the spooky things start happening. Why? Are they bound to her now? I wouldn't think they'd just be hanging around the afterlife, faceless, waiting to be enslaved by a spooky witch, at the off chance one ever makes an appearance. But if so, why would they be on her side? Shouldn't they be, pissed at her for the whole face removal and wasp murder thing? My main issue here, though, is that the spooky girl seems absolutely incapable of functioning as a normal human being on planet Earth, but yet is able to commit the exact perfect suicide that will allow her to become the most powerful supernatural entity ever, giving her the ability to murder people via cell phones and to haunt Facebook code. That's right, they literally show you that Spooky Girl is haunting the code that makes Facebook run.
What? You have no idea how crazy that is, do you? Okay. Look at that. Oh, that is what code normally looks like. Not this. I can't even copy this. This isn't code.
Well, what is it?
I don't know.
Now look, I criticize a lot of movies where modern tech like cell phones and videotapes get haunted by ghosts because I think that's stupid, and I realize that's a bit hypocritical considering that Poltergeist is one of my top 3 favorite horror movies of all time. But there's something infinitely more believable about communications with the other side using radio waves than there is seeing that Facebook code has been haunted. Then when you get to the end of Friend Request and just realize it's all been some kind of demon circle of life thing, you just kind of throw your hands up and just... why did I watch this? The oddest thing about Friend Request, though, is that it's a German film featuring English-speaking actors filmed in South Africa. Movies are weird now. Today's double feature has a pair of movies that will remind you of other, better movies. Also, they both take place in hilltop motels or lodges. Look, I put a lot of work pairing these things up. It's not easy, you know. 1981's Ghost Keeper begins with a title card about the legend of the Wendigo. Wendigo? Wendigo. Which, depending on your preferred version of that legend, is probably going to end up being highly misleading. Also highly misleading, this box art for Ghost Keeper. That movie looks awesome. This one isn't. Our story begins with some dumbass snowmobilers tooling around on snowmobiles. This one lady rides while sitting on her knees, which doesn't seem safe at all, but who cares, these rich assholes already suck for plenty of other reasons. The dumbass snowmobilers see a sign that says keep out, so they go in. And as a result of their dumbassery, they get stuck in the snow and are forced to take refuge in an abandoned lodge. They bounce around inside the lodge for a while, touching everything and basically being jackasses. We get a cat scare at the 17-minute mark, which, go to hell, but at least also something finally happened. So, the dude and the brunette are a couple, and the blonde is just a third wheel. However, the dude is totally into the blonde and wants nothing to do with his actual partner. It makes no sense, especially after the blonde tells this horrifying story about how she decided to be a hooker in high school for fun.
Once, when I was 16, I had this uncontrollable urge to want to do it for money. You know, like being a hooker.
Much, much later, they meet an old woman when she attacks them. But then all is immediately forgiven, and she lets them stay in her lodge after giving them a bit of a tour. The old woman has a fondness for the brunette, telling her that she's strong. Alrighty. Blondie goes to take a bath and is suddenly drowned by a mountain man. And then he takes her to a mountainlier man. There's an ancillary character who we see walking through the snow, presumably looking for the missing trio, who gets scatmanned the second he finally walks into the lodge. Main dude goes crazy and ends up freezing to death outside, and the brunette ends up staying behind to become the new caretaker of the Monster Man. It's The Shining, but without any substance whatsoever. The print that's available on Amazon Prime as of this recording is good and scratchy, and I think in this case that kinda helps the film. A nice pristine print would let you focus solely on the fact that nothing is happening. And I know I keep saying that, but there's something to Ghost Keeper even though there's nothing to it. I can't put my finger on what made me so interested. I mean, a cheaper slasher version of The Shining with only 2 victims at most doesn't sound very good on paper. Maybe it was just the logistics of the filmmaking process, working in that much snow and so on. I don't know, really. Again, maybe it's the joy of seeing a cold environment when it's 120 degrees outside. All I know is that I wasn't as bored as I am with most movies where I lament that nothing is happening. Now, speaking of movies where nothing happens that aren't good... To continue the theme, clumsily, let's talk about 2007's Ice Spiders, which doesn't at all subscribe to the Jaws theory of not showing the monster in order to build suspense. We're only a couple of minutes in, and yep, there are the ice spiders, complete with spider vision, which seems really annoying. I mean, I don't know how these spiders manage to even move with this kind of eyesight. Oh, and speaking of Jaws...
Stand still, you son of a...
Ice Spiders features no less than 3 stars of the 90s series Melrose Place, although this was not the Vanessa Williams I was expecting. No matter, because inexplicably it also stars Stephen J. Cannell, you know, the typewriter guy. Okay, maybe you don't know who that is. He was a prolific writer and TV show creator who gave us things like The Rockford Files, The A-Team, and Renegade. I'm baffled as to why he's in this. I mean, he's fine and does have some other acting credits, but how does the creator of Hardcastle and McCormick say, yeah, Ice Spiders, I want to act in that? Anyway, in a nutshell, there's a secret research base next door to the ski lodge that Mr. Typewriter runs, and they've been trying to make bigger spiders in order to utilize their webbing for military purposes. It's not as nefarious as these plots usually get, but of course a couple of dudes on the project thought things weren't progressing fast enough, so they fed the spiders super duper growth stuff, and the spiders super duper grew. They get out and bother people on the slopes.
Rick! No! Daz, come on! I got you, hang on!
On the other side of things, we've got an Olympic ski team in training at the lodge, where former ski competitor Dash Dashel works. No one involved likes spiders, and so everyone does what they can to not get disemboweled by the giant creatures, since that's what the spiders seem to be into the most. On one hand, Ice Spiders is better than most Sci-Fi Channel fare, but on the other, it's still pretty bland and uninteresting. Also, either they were filming in spring, or it was a very mild winter here at this ski lodge because the snow just isn't that impressive. In fact, some of the skiing moments seem to be a little dangerous considering how much rocky, non-snow covered ground is exposed. Worth noting that this is from the director of The Gate, which is why I gave it a shot over the dozens of other potential Massacre at a Ski Lodge movies. Also, during the closing credits, it's revealed that Fred Olen Ray served as a production consultant. Nothing has ever made more sense.
Race over, Ugly! You lose!
It's dead! It's dead!
Hey, Doc. Nice rack.
I've always liked Stephen King's Cat's Eye, but I probably haven't seen it in 15 years, so a Cat's Eye rewatch is in order. Stephen King wrote the screenplay, which is based on his otherwise unrelated short stories, and strings them together with the framing device of this one cat getting mixed up in the plot of each sequence. Before we even get to our first story, we spend some time with the cat, and I have to apologize slightly to garbage movies like The Dark Tower for doing all the in-your-face Stephen King nostalgia bits, because Cat's Eye might be the most egregious example of this I've ever seen. This movie literally starts with both Cujo and Christine references, not even subtle ones. Cujo is chasing the cat and they almost get hit by Christine, which has a Christine bumper sticker to really let you know that it's Christine. We're in Wilmington, North Carolina, where King will later film Maximum Overdrive, and the cat gets chased onto a truck and ends up in New York City. The cat starts getting psychic messages from Lil Drew Barrymore, desperately asking for help, but before the cat can help, it's scooped up by a passerby and placed into a cage. And now our first story actually begins. While the film never identifies any of its stories by name, this first one is based on Quitters Inc. from King's Night Shift collection. It's about Dick Morrison, who wants to quit smoking. He goes to a company called Quitters Inc., and it's clear from his time in the waiting room that he shouldn't stay here another second, but whatever, there's no story if he doesn't. The place is run by Alan King, and what Dick very quickly learns after a chilling demonstration involving our hero Cat is that this is a mob operation that's found a legit way to do all their favorite mob stuff under the guise of getting people to stop smoking. All you have to do is walk in, and once there, you belong to them. At one point, Dick is watching The Dead Zone on TV. Later, a scene where Dick can think he can hide in his car and smoke is filmed on the same drawbridge from the beginning of Maximum Overdrive. Also, his daughter is played by Barrymore, as she's going to appear in all 3 segments, just like the cat. When Dick attends a party where it seems as though literally everyone there is smoking, a cover of Every Breath You Take hits that's just a little too on the nose. However, it turns out that this is a fantasy sequence, something which doesn't take too long to realize, especially as Alan King enters the scene doing a bit that nearly had me on the floor. It should be said that this story is wholly absurd. I mean, it's not even close to being realistic, but that's why it works so well. And my favorite part might be the henchman's line read when the cat manages to escape.
Oh, fiddly sticks.
The cat gets on a ferry and travels to Atlantic City, New Jersey. And I like that the film's composer, Alan Silvestri, has given the cat a little heroic theme. Now Drew Barrymore is in a cat food commercial, again pleading with the cat for help. But again, before the cat can help, it's picked up by mobster Kenneth McMillan. This second story is called The Ledge, also from the Night Shift collection. That dude has bigger concerns, though, than a new cat, as his wife has been banging Airplane 2's Robert Hayes. He kidnaps Hayes and bets him that he can't walk around the ledge of his building. And if heights make you uncomfortable, they do a hell of a job here putting you in his shoes. My palms were sweating during this entire segment, and even though I could see all the tricks they were doing to make it appear that he was very high up, it's still a well-directed and intense sequence. McMillan strokes an issue of Penthouse magazine at one point in this segment, which is where the story was originally printed. The cat again escapes and rides the rails all the way back to Wilmington, where it finally finds Drew Barrymore. A troll is moved into her room and wants to steal her breath in the film's final story, which King wrote exclusively for the film. And the effects involving this troll creature, with the exception of a couple of composite shots, are amazing. Really, this is terrific stuff going on here. And Frank Welker does his usual solid voice work making troll noises. The cat, which Barrymore has named General, is there to help, but the mom has it out for General and ends up taking it to the pound. But as we've seen, nothing can stop the General, who escapes and heads back to battle the troll and save Drew Barrymore. The mom is reading Pet Sematary at one point, by the way. Not counting the Maximum Overdrive connections, that's 5 King references in his own movie by my count. They drop Every Breath You Take again during the final fight between the cat and the troll, and okay, it's great. This movie is great. Lightweight, sure, not a super scary movie by any stretch, but a lot of fun nevertheless. They even end the film with a song called Cat's Eye, which comes close to receiving a Stargrove Award, but it just doesn't commit. Still, all movies should end with a theme song based on the title of the film. Normally, I prefer anthologies to have different directors for each story, but director Louis Teague, who also helmed Cujo, does a great job here. This is peak 1980s King goodness, and you should definitely have this in your library. "30 Days of Night, Dark Days" starts right at the end of the last film, although this is mainly to ease us into the recasting of the main role, as Melissa George's character is now being played by the actress who played Nikki on Lost. You remember Nikki of Nikki and Paulo fame, the 2 characters who seemingly just showed up on the island that everyone kept asking, "Who the hell are you people?" Yeah, her. The first film ended with a kind of, "oh man, hell yeah, let's do this" moment, but as it turns out, I was fine just thinking about that in my head. I didn't actually need it to go any further than that. The idea of it happening, as it turns out, is much better than the actual execution. Stella's mission of revenge against the vampires who ravaged her town and killed her man takes her to Los Angeles, and immediately the whole 30 Days of Night thing is rendered meaningless, as much of this takes place during, the day. She's immediately recruited by 3 others who also know these vampires exist, one of whom is Walt's dad, speaking of Lost. Guess who gets killed off first? Yep. They're all after the queen vampire, Lilith. I'm not sure how Frasier will feel about this. Helping them with their revenge quest is Dane, the good vampire. Because of course there's a good vampire. Look, I don't know how you make a sequel to 30 Days of Night that I'd care about. Doing the same thing again in a new town and a new group of characters probably isn't the right answer, but also this isn't it either. Maybe have people aware of the problem, lure the vampires to a similar small town, and then be ready for them Home Alone style? I don't know. But Dark Days is just another vampire thing with a ragtag group of heroes hunting them down with only a cursory connection to the original story. Sure, it's world building. I just don't care. Now on the other end of the how much Chuck cares about a thing spectrum, last season I found Happy Death Day to be a fun, albeit gimmicky thing with some surprising twists and turns and an actual character arc for its lead. I certainly never thought there'd be a sequel to it, but Blumhouse, sensing the ability to make some more cash quickly, managed to crank out another one less than a handful of months later. And like the first one, it's good? I know, I'm shocked too, but it is. It's good. Also, it wastes no time. It goes. This time, Ryan, Carter's roommate, seems to be the one stuck in a loop and stalked by a baby mask killer. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, as we learn that Ryan has been experimenting with a science thing which could have created the time loop in the first place. From there, well, it's nuts. It's both the Gremlins 2 and Back to the Future 2 of the franchise, the latter of which they basically straight up admit to. I say Gremlins 2 because the script pointedly mocks things from the original film, and the Back to the Future connections will be obvious when you see it. And you should see it, especially if you had any kind of positive feelings towards the first installment. I don't want to say too much more about it because there's a lot of fun to be had here. It's fun, and freaking wild. You can debate if this is even a horror movie though. This crept up around the first film too, but whatever, that's a slasher movie with a unique spin. This is very different than the first movie, which is a good thing, but it's almost more sci-fi than horror. Ultimately, I don't care, I watched it either way, but have fun debating it and never coming to a conclusion, you nerds. Well, since I've reviewed 1980's Death Ship 7 or 8 times so far in this series, it seems only fair to take a look at 2002's Ghost Ship, which I've seen before but haven't featured thus far. First, let's talk about Dark Castle Entertainment for a second. As you may know, Dark Castle was born from the ashes of the Tales from the Crypt banner after 2 disappointing feature versions of the HBO series. It was initially created by the producers of those 2 films to remake William Castle movies, hence the name, but after the lackluster box office of House on Haunted Hill and 13 Ghosts, they shifted to other horror tales. Their third film was Ghost Ship, also from the director of 13 Ghosts. Also, it's his last film. His last Hollywood anything, actually. Directed 2 movies in 2 years and, ghosted. If you've ever seen Ghost Ship, you know the one great thing about Ghost Ship. It was the only specific thing I remembered. I'm of course talking about the opening sequence, where the fancy passengers of a fancy ocean liner get freaking wrecked by a loose cable and all split into various fractions of their former whole bodies. This is all witnessed by Baby Deadwife from American Gods, who appears to be the only survivor. Look, no matter what else happens here, this sequence is cool and always will be. It's just unfortunate that the best thing in Ghost Ship happens in the first 5 minutes. We then flash forward to now, where we meet our main characters, a group of seafaring scavengers, including baby Carl Urban looking like AJ Styles. Also, yes, Gabriel Byrne and Juliana Margulies, yeah. The first few scenes with our main cast do that thing where there's a cut every 1.5 seconds, but that stops as the movie progresses, thanks, sweet Satan. They're given a tip about a big score, and when they go to investigate, they crash right into the ghost ship, which if you haven't deduced is the ship we saw in the opening scene. Once aboard, the ship is spooky in various random ways, and eventually our heroes find a secret cache of gold. But as they begin to unload the gold, the ghost ship murders their boat. Then it starts murdering them because deep down this movie is just Soul Taker, and then there's a montage which explains the entire backstory, which is so unbelievably bad as it's set to garbage music. Juliana Margulies' character makes a point to explain she's just one of the guys and the crew is her family, which is why it's almost insulting that she's the one who has to get all gooey about the ghost of Emily Browning's character from the opening scene. Like, none of the menfolk could possibly be compassionate towards a child, only the woman could be, because motherhood and whatnot. Maybe this was better thought out in the script, but as it's portrayed in what's on screen, it's just lazy. I gotta admit, as dumb as the idea of it is, and it is dumb, believe me, it's also kind of refreshing that the spooky spirits just kind of sit with our characters and explain what the hell is going on. In the end, Ghost Ship is okay. It would be less than okay without that rad opening, but as it stands, it might be worth one viewing if you've never seen it. Much later in the Dark Castle filmography came 2007's The Reaping. The story takes place in the Louisiana Bayou, and our main characters work for Louisiana State University. This seems to be the setting so that the UK cast, like Idris Elba and David Morrissey, can have dodgy accents that can mostly be explained away as, you know, Cajun swamp people. I'm surprised they didn't get Jean-Claude Van Damme in here somewhere. Hilary Swank plays a debunker of religious miracles, and so far in her investigations has come up with a scientific explanation for each and every case she's investigated. But when she gets a request to study the blood rivers of Haven, she's about to be faced with her greatest spooky challenge. You know, for all the talk of Hollywood being a leftist, godless wasteland, religious horror movies, of which there are plenty, always seem to go out of their way to make the character who doesn't believe in God out to be the biggest jackass in the film and just rubs their wrongness in their face like James Cagney with the grapefruit. Oh, sorry, you can't hear that old man reference alarm because that's actually the old man's dad's reference alarm, and that guy's dead. Anyway, The Reaping seems pretty typical for a Dark Castle production. A decent cast hampered by highly suspect CG effects and nonsensical scares. Did the CG locusts just eat the cameraman? Swank at one point awakens from 2 nightmares, and then either during or immediately afterwards has 2 visions also. At that point, I no longer knew if anything in the movie was even actually happening. The end of the movie tries to make some of this seem like a big twist, but nah. On the plus side, I will say how surprising it is that Idris Elba survives as long as he does. I figured he was a goner in the first act, but he makes it all the way to the third. However, he does go out like a chump, which is rage-inducing. In the end, it seems as though this movie is about the devil doing a bunch of things that lead the one person who can defeat him straight to him. Dumb. So dumb. When the credits started to roll, I wondered aloud what rookie garbage director was put in charge of this, and was shocked to see Stephen Hopkins' name. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 and Predator 2 aren't great, but they're way better than this. And 1994's Blown Away, as goofy as it can get, is still something that's way better than its reputation. This? Ooh.
It's a Mr. Death or something. He's come about the reaping. I don't think we need any at the moment.
You said it. One of my favorite new subgenres of horror is apparently when the Italians invade a small southern city and make one of their batshit insane movies there. Movies like Ghost House, The Curse, and now Nightmare Beach.
Welcome to spring break.
At first I thought they were filming this during actual spring break, which seems like a daunting task. But after a few scenes, you can tell they sent someone out to get a bunch of second unit shots of spring break, while the bulk of the film is filmed in much less chaotic places. I did a whole week of Bad Guy Comes Back from the Electric Chair movies a couple of years ago, and I thought I'd covered them all, but nope, here's another one. We see biker dude Diablo go to the chair in the opening scene. But when he apparently comes back from the dead to exact revenge or whatever, he's got himself a rad murder cycle. This was all I needed. Just take me away, movie.
I want to get off of this thing!
Icing on the cake is the presence of genre favorites Michael Parks, Lance Legault, and John Saxon, but more on them in a minute. This is the story of 2 college football bros, Ronnie and Skip, who've come to the fictitious Manatee Beach, which is actually Daytona Beach and somewhere in South Florida, to do spring break things and forget about the loss in the Orange Bowl a few months earlier. Skip is the good guy of the two, as Ronnie is a bit of an ass.
You know, you'd be a lot prettier if you smiled more.
Ugh. Okay, sure, yeah, bike stunts, whatever. Diablo's second in command in the Demon's biker gang is not the most menacing fellow I've ever seen.
Biker parking only.
I didn't see any sign.
I'm it. Now move that toy before I trash it.
Get a grip.
What are you doing with my old lady?
Nothing.
Then what are them rovers for?
Luckily, Ronnie isn't around for long, although maybe he didn't deserve this. Okay, I've never seen anything so perfectly depict what life is like on a daily basis in Florida until just now. Michael Parks is a timid local doctor with some secrets that get him blackmailed into the town's cover-up of the serial killings, one of which being sweet booze. This definitely is a different role for Parks and is probably one you've never seen him in before.
You can't hide murder.
You can, huh?
Will it your trunk?
No. I'm ruined! Gonna take my license!
John Saxon, as the town's main law officer, has Jason-like superpowers to appear just about whenever a scene needs him to. He's also got a dark secret that ties into the overall plot. Everyone gets something to do, and the veterans all make the most out of their parts. Seriously, every goddamn Saturday, everywhere you go. Diablo just seems to be killing random people and doesn't show any interest in hooking back up with his biker gang. But he's got a cool theme song whenever he shows up to murder someone. Nightmare Beach seems to be a supernatural slasher that ultimately is more Spring Break than slasher, but it's still pretty entertaining, and the Blu-ray looks terrific. Actually, I'd say the list goes Spring Break, John Saxon being a piece of garbage, and then the killer biker movie. There's even a late-game plot twist that's pretty damn bonkers. It's all 80s as hell with a fun soundtrack, and did I mention the murder cycle? Okay, now this movie is just attacking me.
Can't pull this crap with me! Couldn't kill nobody! You mothers are framing me just like you framed Diablo.
Shut the fuck up.
Son of a bitch! Hey! Come back here and take this goddamn cops off! Go get her!
See my baby blue, the best thing he's got. But baby, please don't take my heart.
Everything's okay, officer. Thanks. Bye.
I need to just read to you the official synopsis for 1991's The Unborn because I can't summarize it any better than this. A young wife suspects that a mysterious doctor has inseminated her with mutant sperm in an attempt to create a superhuman fetus. Wow, I know, right? Okay, before we get to all that though, we've got a couple of other things to discuss. Specifically, this couple, who aren't our main characters, but she's pregnant, so they're obviously a part of the plot.
Careful. He's kicking.
He's been so active tonight.
Maybe he wants to come out and play.
Ew, God, no. Oh, ew, gross. Guy.
Janet?
Well, that all went horribly wrong. Then we meet our main couple, who have had great difficulty in conceiving a child. They get referred to an elite fertility specialist, and oh hey, was that Phoebe or Ursula?
Oh, here. And just let me know when you're done, okay?
As they wait, they're accosted by hippie freak Kathy Griffin. Great. James Karen is the doctor, and these people are obviously unfamiliar with his filmography, because if they were, they'd run. But no, they explain how they've been unable to get pregnant, and then he does some tests and some things, and then she's pregnant. Hooray! She neglects to tell the doctor, though, about the history of mental illness in her family, as her mother has undetermined mental issues, and she herself has had bouts of paranoid depression. Kathy Griffin and her partner run some kind of unlicensed Lamaze class where tensions amongst the non-believers can run high.
I wish you wouldn't be so afraid to embrace your own gender.
Suck my dick.
Yikes. The miracle pregnancy does not go well, and Brooke Adams is feeling the stress.
You know, computers generate PCBs. I mean, that may not be good for the baby.
Oh, for Christ's sake! I've given up smoking and drinking. Now you want me to give up writing? What am I, a goddamn incubator?
Just a suggestion.
Dude, just go to work and stay there forever. Her stress continues to escalate as she goes crazy in a one-woman show where loud noises make her insane, and then she kills her cat. Once she realizes this behavior is not normal, she starts piecing together evidence that her doctor might have had ulterior motives. She notices a subliminal message in a New Age tape that he gave her.
Smarter. Better. Go more.
It's all right.
Her pregnancy buddy has stabbed herself silly. Then, after dialing a 25-digit number, she gets to listen as Kathy Griffin's pregnant partner murders her.
The number is 555-4621.
Now firmly convinced that her doctor is conducting genetic experiments, she has a back alley abortion, and that should really end the movie, right? Nope. Instead, this basically launches a borderline unwatchable third act where the mutant fetus starts murdering people and causing car accidents and, well, just yuck. No thank you. The Unborn features a score by Gary Newman, which is pretty good and yet also way out of place for this movie. He would later use this score for an album, which is way more appropriate. I have no idea what the hell was going on in 1991 to spawn all these mutant baby abortion movies. There's another one that I tried watching called The Suckling, which you have to be a special kind of demented to get any joy out of watching that horrid thing. To each their own and all, but no. Now, for some inexplicable reason, a sequel was made to The Unborn in 1993, but then not released until 1995. Both films are Roger Corman productions, but are better than the usual 90s Roger Corman fare. Doesn't mean they're good, just that they're good for 90s Roger Corman movies. It took me several seconds of scrutiny to even identify what the hell is on the poster art for The Unborn 2. We start with Robin Curtis, aka the second Savick, on the playground, and oh my god, she's some kind of baby Terminator. Michelle Green from LA Law is moving into her new home with her infant son. She's a children's writer, which is weird because Brooke Adams' character in the first film was also a children's writer. Apparently only children's writers can be the lead character in this mutant baby franchise. And skipping ahead a moment, I kept waiting for it to be revealed that this was in fact the same character, but it's like they chickened out at the last minute and refused to commit to such a thing. It's so weird. Also, her son is clearly a mutant puppet baby, and yet she's oblivious to this fact. Based on how the first film ends, this is why I was convinced it was going to be the same character. Savick continues her wholly unpleasant mission of shooting babies to death and eventually gets to Michelle Green's name on her hit list. They interact a bit without any baby murder, and at some point Savick explains that the babies use mind control to keep the moms from knowing they're mutant babies. She also had a mutant baby, but after it killed her husband and then tried to kill her, she became the baby Terminator. It was touched on a bit in the first film, but this one goes on to explain what James Karen was actually up to. His minion, Nick from Family Ties, explains.
Dr. Meyerling cared. Cared about the air. Cared about the water. The soil. Cared about the whole planet. Cared about the fact that too many goddamn indifferent people are being born on that planet. I worked with Meyerling for 10 years. 10 years. Do you think I was gonna let a decade's worth of dreams slip away? Huh? Huh?
What does all this have to do with Joey?
Think, Catherine, think! People of average intelligence are not going to make the difference. These children will make the difference. Not some useless morality binding them. These children are our only hope. You should be proud, Catherine. You should smile, because you've been a part of it all. It's just too bad that we don't need you anymore.
Basically, his solution to Earth's certain environmental doom was to try and create Jim Henson's Silicon Valley babies. Yes, there's nothing I can imagine more that would save humanity from its own stupidity than mutants without morals killing everything. Wow, this fight, good lord. I'll say this, at least both of these movies, in their own unique way, are committed to their dumb premise. And while neither movie is what I would call good, the second one is the more watchable of the two. Which is insane to say since this movie is about someone shooting babies to death. It's got this neat camera shot at one point though, and it's the rare horror movie that has a definitive ending instead of a hot bullshit sequel hook. Still, this movie is about shooting babies to death. Then there's the whole weird thing about calling this The Unborn 2 when literally every baby in this movie has already been born, so they can get shot. Did I mention this whole thing is about shooting babies to death? So, just spiders, that's it? I guess they're like ice spiders, but without the Gestapo tactics. Oh, what? On the surface, there's nothing about 2000's spiders that makes you think it'll be anything notable. Most B-tier movies from this time aren't. The direct-to-DVD market around this time was still booming, but most of it was the equivalent of video game shovelware. Cheap trash pumped out to feed a market hungry for movies. You glance at the cast, and the only name that jumps out is the lead, who would go on to star on Once Upon a Time and spark the imagination of what seemed like a third of my Twitter feed at all times. This early role for her doesn't exactly scream quality, though. However, the film is directed by Gary Jones, who directed the mid-90s creature feature Mosquito, a film that builds upon its absurdity and eventually won me over in the end. Spiders ends up being similar in a lot of ways. Well, that's only one spider, but okay, I'll allow it. Also, these guys are doing the special effects, so color me intrigued. She plays a college student named Marcy, who writes for the college newspaper and is an alien conspiracy nut. Her entire workspace is nothing but alien investigation stuff, and it would seem like the entire newsroom is devoting all its resources to working with her on her insane theories. The spider from the opening scene ended up going into space, which is the story Marcy was supposed to be covering. You'd think she'd be interested in the plight of the space spider, but instead she and half the newsroom are stalking out a military base because people came into her office purporting to be aliens that made a stop there after arriving on Earth. I swear this all feels like a lost early X-Files script. Problem with that though is that by 2000 everyone was sick of the X-Files. Yeah, it's true, don't at me. Meanwhile in space...
I'm injecting now. Oh my god! Oh my god, where'd he go? Oh my god!
What just happened? Our readings are going through the roof.
Oh my god!
I don't know what the hell they do to this spider, which they've given the codename Mother-in-Law, but it causes absolute chaos. Apparently they got hit by a stealth solar flare the second they injected the spider with something, which then leads to the spider trying to murder everyone. The evil government takes control of the shuttle, tells the public it burned up upon re-entry, but in fact it crash lands right where the conspiracy chuckleheads were camped out to see them aliens.
What the hell? It's a UFO.
No. It's the shuttle.
Whoa.
This feels like a Disney Channel movie, but with gore.
Oh my god! What the hell happened here?
Dude is jacked up.
The bad guys then show up, and then, well, okay, so much for that spider. The dude squished it.
Move it. What happened to Mother-in-Law? Can you hear me? Talk to me. What happened up there?
From this point, it's a lot of sneaking and transporting and hiding, and then roaming around the basement of the secret base where our Hardy Boys Nancy Drew leads keep finding rooms with spooky things in jars.
Must stop Mother-in-Law.
Yeah, I hear you, buddy. Of course, that dude has been suffering long enough, and...
doing in here?
This is how you do mayhem on a low budget, just goddamn chaos and everyone screaming their heads off. This commences the running around this basement part of the film, where the spider keeps trying to shakma its way into whichever room our heroes are in at any time.
It's like a bad sci-fi movie.
Oh, movie, don't do that. Don't call yourself out like that. It was a funny joke in Top Secret, but that's it. All this does is make the audience say, haha, yeah, this does suck. They find evidence of an Apollo 18 mission, which never happened. Also a box with the Kennedy assassination inside it or something. None of these developments matter.
What are we gonna do now?
Oh, God! Look out, Marcy! Hold on, buddy, I got you! Don't let me fall! Hold on! Ow! No! Your history now!
I mean, what on earth? One flaw of this movie is how everyone's so flippant and antagonistic during all of this.
They lay their eggs in living flesh and reproduce asexually.
Hey, there's something you can relate to.
Up yours, butt wipe.
Every scene has dialogue like this. Focus, people. Okay, this is like a Nickelodeon show. And they've implemented Itsy Bitsy Spider into the score? Seriously, I don't know if I love this or hate this. This feeling like a kid show production makes it all the more hilarious when characters swear.
So what are you going to do if you find it? I'm going to kill that fucker. Damn right.
Well, now they're just straight up using that spooky sound effect from the X-Files. There's honestly something goofy or notable in every single scene of this movie. This video could be 3 hours long if I was insane. After the main bad guy gets dispatched and the spider gets squished by an elevator, the film wraps up, except that there's still 20 minutes left. Thankfully, the movie decides to make the most of it, and it goes goddamn nuts. Bad guy was dead, but he's back and somehow managed to beat our heroes back to the newspaper offices, where he's managed to shoot the newspaper's editor in the head without anyone in the newsroom hearing it. Okay, fuck everything. This movie is amazing.
Hey, Phil, I need your stick.
Look out! Look out! Go, get out, get out!
Duck and cover! Get out of here!
Duck and cover? What the shit, lady? That's not gonna help anyone. Every scene in this movie is insane. So now there's a giant spider rampaging through town, and there's stunts, and there's chaos, and it's all great. This is great. I'm all in now. They're literally doing the hut 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 thing. The spider's at the Staples Center, and while flying around in a helicopter, Marcy, the college newspaper reporter, decides she knows how to use a rocket launcher while tied to a rope hanging out of the chopper.
Stabilize! Jeez!
Yeah, you stupid helicopter, jeez. Anyway, it's an amazing setup to a joke to where she misses wildly, but there's only a couple minutes left in the film, and so of course she blows the spider to bits. Look, if all that doesn't motivate you to watch spiders, I don't know what will. Just know that for every goofy-ass thing I pointed out, there are two things that I didn't. This is one of those movies I wish we'd discovered on the Bamfcast first, because good or bad, this thing is a lot of fun. Oh well. Also, it should be noted that while the film is called Spiders, and there are multiple spiders during the course of the film, there are never two spiders on screen at the same time. Just pointing this out in case you have very specific spider fetish needs. I award you a bonus point for the alliteration of your title, Mountaintop Motel Massacre. But that's it. Deep in the mountains of, Louisiana lies the Mountaintop Motel. Now, I've lived in Louisiana and I don't recall any mountains, but Google says there are a couple, ones which other states would consider hills. We're told that this motel is run by a woman who spent some time in an asylum. That's fun. And then it starts with her hacking a guinea pig to death for daring to be in her presence. Whee! When she goes inside, she hacks up some more animals, and also her daughter, who was attempting some kind of spooky ritual / tea party? How delightful.
Show me a sign. I told you never to do.
The sheriff asks how it happened, and she tells him it must have been some kind of freak accident. For some reason, he's all, yeah, that checks out, I'll come back later and maybe we'll talk about it some more, or maybe not. And he leaves. People begin to arrive at the motel for overnight stays and to escape an impending storm.
This is it?
What the hell did you expect? A Holiday Inn? You know I can't afford that.
Boy, aim high, newlyweds.
I'm so horny, I can't stand it.
Ah, words every woman loves to hear. As the cabins fill up, the crazy lady uses secret underground tunnels to murder her guests. She loads one room up with deadly snakes, another with rats, sends roaches into yet another room, until finally she just starts popping up through trapdoors and slashing the guests herself. Mountaintop Motel Massacre is basically Psycho, but if there was no Norman Bates character and it was just Mrs. Bates murdering all the guests. It's also bad. The performances are all one note and amateurish, and there's no real story to speak of. Even for a slasher film, it's lacking in the slightest bit of substance. Make me care about literally anything that's happening, that's all I ask. What's this woman's deal? Why was she committed? Why was she released? What set her off? Give me something, anything. I can't imagine the events of this movie were set into motion because of a guinea pig. The movie is yet another case of something that was filmed a few years before it actually got released, and didn't get an actual wide release until 3 years later, when New World Pictures picked it up. I have no idea what they saw in it.
They ought to call this a roach motel.
My interest in watching Drive-In Massacre came about solely because I needed a movie to pair with Mountaintop Motel Massacre. And for the first 5 minutes or so, I figured that was going to be a mistake, but then the first part of the massacring happened, and whoo boy!
I want to
So yeah, someone is killing the customers at a local drive-in theater. The manager's a low-rent Bond villain, and the drive-in used to be a carnival where both said manager and the caretaker used to work as sword swallowers, or in other various sword-related professions. So, you know, suspects. The case is being investigated by two people I'll never be able to tell apart. I mean, seriously, this is the same guy. The special effects budget for this movie must have been insane. I'm very impressed. Drive-In Massacre follows a very simple template. A scene of hardcore violence at the drive-in, a lengthy scene of police investigation that must have made anyone feel like they could have been a detective, and then repeat. And holy god, the investigation scenes go on forever! Although I suppose if I wanted to show off my puffy guy clone special effects, I'd focus on that too. The soundtrack sounds like there's an error with the print.
You know what that is, Engelson?
Just gonna leave that flubbed line in there, huh? Okay. By the time 6 people have been massacred at the drive-in, you might wonder, why isn't anyone closing down the drive-in? Wouldn't that save lives at this point? Well, don't worry about that. Just shh. The thing you need to know about Drive-In Massacre is that the script was written in a week, and then it was shot in 4 days, and its total cost was $30,000. I suppose on one hand that's impressive, and while it does seem efficient at only 74 minutes, that includes a whole new sequence added near the end, featuring screenwriter and Back to the Future bum George Buck Flowers, that ultimately never has anything to do with anything. I guess that fits in with most of the scenes, actually. And the movie makes the bold choice of not even resolving its own story. The killer's identity is never revealed, but an announcer lets the drive-in audience that's watching the film know that they are to remain calm because there's now a murderer at their theater.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the manager. Do not panic. There is a
On one hand, it's kind of fun considering the audience for which it was made. On the other hand, man, fuck off.
What a turkey.
Deciding to watch Mutant can be a little confusing because the Roger Corman joint Forbidden World is also known as Mutant in certain circles, and this film's box art is vague enough to make you wonder if it's the film you've already seen. Rest assured though, it's its own thing, and even has a Richard Band score to boot. Wings Hauser and his brother are on a road trip through Georgia when Wings' hijinks almost gets them killed. They run afoul with local ne'er-do-wells who seem to be breaking all kinds of laws, but as we all know now, nothing matters. Aside from the redneck problem though, there's something else going on in this town, which I'll skip way ahead and mention that there's an evil corporation dumping chemicals into the town's water supply, which is having an adverse effect on the population. You could say it's turning the locals into zombies of sorts, but they're kind of dinner theater zombies. Most of them are very much the actual locals from the town where this movie is being filmed. And they act like it. Wings' brother actually gets offed way sooner than I expected, which leaves Wings to pair up with a local school teacher to uncover just what the heck is going on. Don't expect great zombie action from Mutant. There's no real rule set involved with these particular things, with the exception of them not liking bright lights for whatever reason. Also, some of them have the power of having hot hands, I think? There's lots of ads of Dramamine along the way for some reason, and it'll probably drive you crazy trying to figure out who this kid is. He's the boy from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There, I saved you from going mad. There's some good small-town mayhem in this, and Wings Hauser being a weirdo is almost always fun, but in the end, Mutant is just okay. Watchable, but just okay. A few years later, a movie called Nightmare at Noon was made. It stars Wings Hauser and Bo Hopkins and is about a nefarious plot to poison a small town's water supply, which turns the locals into monsters. No, I didn't mess up the description, and it's not a remake of Mutant either, at least not officially. But it is the same movie as Mutant, just with some very important changes. These credits seem like they were produced years after the fact. One of the immediate improvements over Mutant is everything involving the evil plot. It's being run by albino Brian James, who manages to be menacing while ultimately only saying one word in the entire film, and that's to a horse. They've got sweet vehicles too, but I don't think that's a real government agency. Just a hunch.
Howdy, fellas. Them's pretty lost. What you doing, making a movie?
We've moved from Georgia to Utah, and it's an immediate scenery upgrade. This time, Wings Hauser plays a fancy lawyer who rolls through town with his fancy wife in a fancy RV. Along the way, they've picked up hitchhiker Bo Hopkins. He's not the law in this one because another upgrade has taken place, and that's casting George Kennedy as the town sheriff.
Did anybody ever hear that this is supposed to be a quiet town?
At first you might feel compelled to suggest to just be somewhere else at noon to survive all this, but in all honesty the title is meaningless as the bad things happen at all times, day or night. This time, instead of the poison water turning everyone into county fair zombies, the townspeople here become insane stuntmen. Holy shit, this rules! The main cast isn't immune to the poison water, as Kennedy had some earlier that day, and he assumes the role you're familiar with of the dude who got bitten by a zombie and has to hide it from everyone. It also gets Wings' wife, who they have to then lock away in the town jail. Somehow by the end they find a cure and fix her, but it's a whole plot development they skip right over until you see that she's totally fine 30 seconds before the end credits roll. There's a rather informative documentary on the Blu-ray that appears to be an extra from the 2002 DVD release, produced by the director himself, much like how he interviewed himself on the Zero Boys Blu-ray. It uses extensive interview footage from the set and is a terrific watch. Nico mentions that he did not like Wings Hauser at all and was warned against hiring him, as Wings had a pretty bad drug problem at the time. However, he says that years later, Wings apologized for his on-set behavior. So, two things about that. One, if you asked me to pick which movie featured Wings Hauser out of his mind on the cocaine, I would have said Mutant, because he seems positively subdued in Nightmare at Noon. Also, the clash between star and director might explain the oddness of the third act, where Wings is essentially written out of the film, leaving everything on Bo Hopkins' shoulders. Which is fine, don't get me wrong, it's just weird that your top-billed star literally has nothing to do with the film's finale. It should be mentioned that there are a couple of times during the film where the transfer becomes full frame only before quickly returning to widescreen. It's not egregious, but it does make you wonder what went wrong with the transfer. And finally, it's worth mentioning that there is extensive coverage of that motorcycle stunt, which was performed by the film's stunt coordinator, and also it went horribly, horribly wrong. While they got the shot and what you see in the film is the only attempt, he overshot the safety padding at the end of the jump and completely shattered his leg upon landing. It's not surprising that between the two, Nightmare at Noon is the vastly superior experience. Mutant is fine and all, and again, Nightmare at Noon isn't technically considered a remake, but it's definitely the better of the two similar tales. It's got stunts and jokes to go with the poison water zombie story. Both are worth checking out, but Nightmare at Noon is the winner. (1983's) The House on Sorority Row is one of those mystery slashers where the film keeps you guessing the entire time as to who the killer might actually be, similar to, say, 1981's Happy Birthday to Me, and of course a million other things. I just wanted to mention Happy Birthday to Me again. Let's run through the early events of this film. An opening scene is clearly taking place in the past because the film is tinted in history color. An old lady tries to give birth to a baby, but maybe it died, according to the doctor, who is being deliberately vague.
No. No!
Then we're in the present as it's summer break, and 7 graduating sorority girls stay behind to throw one last party in their sorority house, which also happens to be the house from the opening scene. And oh hey, Harley Jane Kozak. She'll go on to have a career. Their house mother is the lady who we saw trying to give birth, and she's entirely dubbed, which is distracting.
Vicky. Where is she?
We haven't seen her.
I'll speak to her later.
Also, she throws them all out and won't tolerate any partying. Killjoy. She's such a killjoy, in fact, that she's got a murder cane, which she then uses to murder the waterbed of dirty fornicators. Meanwhile, the house mother's doctor makes some notes about who we assume is her, basically saying that she's about to snap, and if something spooky were to happen, she's liable to go stark raving mad. Again, though, deliberately vague. Our lady graduates, not knowing any of this of course, plan to get her back for being a killjoy by threatening her with a gun for funsies. And what follows is, well, the events that set this movie into motion are insane. Long story short, they flat out murder their house mother and then are all, oh no, we'll get into trouble for this. So they just dump her in the swimming pool and throw their party. For a while, everyone's just wandering around looking distressed, but eventually people start dying. Who could the killer be? Did the house mother really die? Her body goes missing. Is it her? Did one of the girls snap because of what they did earlier that day and decide to start murdering their sorority sisters? Is it the doctor who shows up late in the film to explain everything? This one had me going for quite a while, and every time I thought I had it figured out, it would throw another curveball at me. But then ultimately, the reveal of the killer is so underwhelming that my brain didn't even start accepting it until the credits were rolling. I was convinced that what the movie was telling us in the end was yet another swerve, and I swear that the visuals themselves were contributing to that, as it appears that the killer manages to totally change their appearance while masked in the last few minutes. Also, the movie just stops. The killer is revealed, but it isn't resolved. You have to actually finish your movie there, movie. I deducted some points for that. On the plus side, it's got this sweet van, and if you enjoy this weird red-green lighting scheme that I see in these things all the time, there's some of that. Also, it's got a Richard Band score, and Rachel Talalay, who would go on to direct one of the maybe top 3 Doctor Who episodes of all time, served as a script supervisor and apprentice editor here. Director Mark Rosman's next gig was 1984's Mutant, but only briefly as he was replaced early during production. Huh. Tomorrow I'll talk about how Rosman is remembered fondly in the 2009 remake, conveniently shortened to Sorority Row, because kids can't handle long titles. You know, like Harry Potter and his friends meet the Wizarding Congress of Azerbaijan. As I said yesterday, director of the original House on Sorority Row, Mark Rosman, is treated well by this 2009 remake. He's credited with writing the original script upon which this is based, of course, and they also use his name as the fictional college in the film. That's nice. But let me go ahead and spoil my opinion of this film for you. God, I hate it. I loathe it. I will never watch a frame of this again willingly, ever. The opening is super condensed in comparison to the original, as we pretty much get straight to the prank that sets the film's events into motion. This time the sorority girls pretend to drug a fellow friend and then allow her boyfriend to think she's dead, because someone cheated on someone and something about fraternities or some such thing, and I don't really know. This entire setup is really confusing and incredibly stupid for all involved. Anyway, the plan for the not dead girl is to dismember her body and throw her down a well. And for some reason, the distraught boyfriend decides to stab what he thinks is his dead girlfriend in the chest with a tire iron.
She wasn't dead!
But what about their futures, they cry, as they mostly reluctantly agree to go ahead and throw her down the well and never speak of this again. Obviously, I've never been a part of a sorority, but is this what sororities teach? We jump ahead 8 months to graduation, which honestly is a stupid change to the original story, since everyone was still raw and dazed when the events of the original film went down. But in this version, everyone's moved on from their super evil deeds to go back to their regular run-of-the-mill ones. Graduation party, blah blah blah, someone starts murdering everyone involved. Is it one of the murderers? Is it the dead girl who's not really dead? I don't care this time. I don't. I just want them all dead. Especially the ringleader, Jessica, who is just the worst. I hate rooting for people to die in these things because it's not in my nature, but holy God, Jessica needs the worst death imaginable for her evilness. Worst of all, they try to make this Jessica person all glib and jokey about everything, especially in the third act. These moments are clearly designed as tension breakers, but all they serve to do was infuriate me. The tire iron ends up being the murder weapon of choice in this one, and the killer's calling card. Of course, now it's a ridiculous, tricked-out, gimmicky tire iron, which is the one thing I'll give this movie some points for. This version of the story sucks. It just does. It's the awfulness of the 80s characters ratcheted up 1,000%. With the bonus of cell phones and social media to make things extra awful. And they've replaced the constant parade of possible suspects and motives in the original with people just talking and being deplorable. And a couple of characters keep acting like they might be the killer for no reason at all, which makes no sense. The entire film seems to be shot handheld, so even the most mundane dialogue sequence features a camera that's bouncing around like a Homicide Life on the Street cameraman on a trampoline. It would be terrific if this technique had never become a thing. The nods to the original are nice and all. The original murder weapon makes a cameo at one point, and it's surprising that there was enough fondness for the first movie to even do it. Also, the quote-unquote right people end up surviving this thing, but they could have gotten offed, and I would have been okay with that too.
Do I know you? Imagine, yeah? You sell weed on the quad, right?
No, I was the valedictorian. Your graduation? Today?
No.
Suspect Zero has only just started, but I mean, it's Ben Kingsley, right? That's Ben Kingsley's head in silhouette. He's the killer. I can't have guessed it this early, right? Oh, yeah, it's Ben Kingsley. We're not doing a mystery thing. Okay, got it. Hotshot FBI man Aaron Eckhart is demoted to Albuquerque for some reason and immediately lands a serial killer case. Also, someone is sending him spooky faxes. The two things might be related, but in the meantime, his former partner and maybe lover, Carrie-Anne Moss, joins him to help make the investigations extra awkward. The clues lead Eckhart to believe that the suspect is a former FBI agent, and also a psychic of some kind that was part of Project Icarus, where agents were trained in remote viewing to solve crimes and such. Also, he comes to believe that the serial killer is actually killing other serial killers. Suspect Zero has its heart in the right place, but other than that, nothing much works. Everyone is awkward and unpleasant in this, and no one has conversations the way actual humans do. Did the cast all hate one another? They're sure acting like it. And Eckhart's character's desperate descent into madness as he learns more about the case doesn't feel at all earned, it's forced and contrived. The music is kinda lousy. It doesn't look good, it's just all around unpleasant and challenging to stick with. Ben Kingsley's weirdo performance is the only notable thing here. Also, the movie acts like Albuquerque is some kind of backwater nothing town, but anyone who's seen Breaking Bad or, has been to Albuquerque knows it's a town like any other.
Don't have any coffee.
That's okay. It takes some experience.
Yeah. Isn't there a Starbucks around here?
It's a joke, right?
Yeah, that's a joke.
Yeah, no, why would there be a Starbucks in Albuquerque? Oh, wait. Now, speaking of Aaron Eckhart, okay, that's the best segue I've got. 2016's Incarnate is one of those movies that just drops you into its slightly alternate reality world without any kind of explanation. That can be risky, but often it can be a lot of fun. This is from director Brad Peyton, who would go on to direct much bigger, much more expensive movies like San Andreas and Rampage. Also, it was filmed in 2013, but not released until 2016. No idea why. Hey, do you like that song, Sail? Enjoy getting it stuck in your head as this movie begins, where Eckhart enters a nightclub and beats up the world's strongest man, Mark Henry. It turns out this movie is Inception meets Fallen meets The Exorcist, as Eckhart is actually a wheelchair-bound exorcist with a tragic backstory, of course, who uses science instead of religion to enter the minds of possessed people to help free them.
You're here to perform an exorcism, right?
Let's get this straight right off the bat. I don't do exorcisms. I don't use religious methods to treat the symptoms. I go inside the victim's mind to treat the disease. I don't compel these entities from the outside, I evict them from the inside.
You evict them?
However, he may have an ulterior motive for helping the people he's trying to save, and that becomes apparent when the Red Woman from Game of Thrones comes to Eckhart asking for help in saving her son, who is possessed by a very powerful demon, one that Eckhart might be personally familiar with. It's a little hokey, and okay, sometimes it's a lot hokey, and in the end, science just means punching the demon in the face a whole bunch. It starts better than it ends, but I'd still say it's worth a look, and you can find this Blu-ray pretty cheap in a lot of places. Check it out. From veteran director Ted Post comes this tale of Baby, a grown-ass man with a developmental disorder who has been kept like an infant his entire life. His mother and two sisters seem shady, and they are shady, believe me, so a social worker enters the scene, who might also be shady herself. The baby is disturbing, and not at all in a good way. Hell, I'd go as far as to say that the whole film only seems to exist in order to serve up a twist in the final 30 seconds, and that's just not worth it. It's an awkward and cruel film, and I'd rather never think about it again. One might question just what the hell genre the baby falls into. If your idea of horror is non-stop unpleasantness, then sure, maybe this is that. I'd argue that it might not even be a horror movie, but that would require me to come up with an alternate genre to place it in, and I'm unable to do that. Arrow Video has released this one on Blu-ray if you like your horror thrillers cringy and unwatchable. There's a good selection of retrospective extras on the disc though. There's an audience for this, to be sure, but it just isn't me. I don't know if The Baby is a bad film, but it's definitely something I consider unpleasant and unwatchable. 2009's The Unborn, though, is a bad film, a dreadfully bad film, and I'm amazed at just how bad considering its cast and crew. Admittedly, I started this one up without doing any research, and halfway was expecting a remake of the 1991 film. Oh boy, nope. The film starts with some weird stuff, which obviously is going to lead to a main character waking up from it. But this might be the first time I've ever experienced a character awaken from a nightmare without the movie actually showing us that it happened. I mean, did the house just wake up? Anyway, this is Casey, and she's babysitting for some neighbors with a newborn and a demon child.
Eddie, stop that. We have to go.
Jumby wants to be born now.
Jumby wants to be born now? From Pee-wee's Playhouse? Is she pregnant with Jumby? Jumby turns out to be the nickname of her twin, which she murdered in the womb with her umbilical cord. And it was at this moment early on that I said out loud, this is fucking stupid. I see where this is going, and it's going to be fucking stupid. Okay, but forget all that, because it's not the actual plot, but instead a very minor detail. The actual plot is even stupider. She is pregnant, though, that's not in dispute, although the movie tries to make this a huge final reveal right before the end credits roll. I mean, we've watched her have sex and then get all pukey in a ladies' restroom at a nightclub, which has a glory hole in it for some reason, which the movie turns into a spooky hole. Honestly, though, why is the glory hole in the ladies' room? Somehow Nazis are involved in the backstory here, as they were experimenting on twins in World War II, and the spooky kid everyone keeps seeing was a twin who died in a concentration camp. Then a demon that specifically likes twins took over his body 2 days later. It's total nonsense. Around the halfway point, Casey gets referred to a rabbi for more information, and he's played by Academy Award winner Gary Oldman. What the hell is Gary Oldman doing in this? She asks him to perform a Jewish exorcism because the demon is a Jewish demon, and he agrees to at least look into it. As he does his cursory research into the demon shows up to be vaguely spooky to him. Whatever this stupid-ass thing is just goes after anyone, for any reason, at any time. There's no rhyme or reason to any of this. Then, 65 minutes in, Idris Elba shows up. The movie has some balls to put the cast members you want to see way past the moment where you've already turned it off. He's a priest, and they bring him in as an exorcism backup. Since just because it's a demon from Jewish mythology, it doesn't mean it only attacks Jews. That checks out. He's not here long though, because soon they're performing the exorcism, which goes badly for most people involved. But then Casey is okay, it's all okay, but Jumby, this is all the worst. Writer-director David S. Goyer might be the most inconsistent creative force working in movies today. On one hand, you've got Blade, Batman Begins, Dark City, all great. On the other, Demonic Toys, Man of Steel, and this. His name combined with Oldman and Elba is why I thought this had a chance of being good. Boy, was I wrong. This will end up being the worst movie of the whole season, easily. I can't imagine anything worse than this. This is so bad. It's the kind of bad that you just stare at and go, I can't believe how bad this is. You know who else was a carpenter? Jesus. Someone in the comments section is probably going to say that at some point in the near future. Nah, who am I kidding? It'll just be a couple of people saying first, and then a third person saying fourth, and then some bots, and then someone will call me an SJW, and then I'll stop looking at the comments. Alright, anyway, 1988's The Carpenter sucks. It comes across as a student film, but somehow the student's uncle knew Wings Hauser and got him to show up in exchange for a sandwich or two. You may have noticed all this pointless footage of someone sawing. That's how this movie begins. It never gets more exciting than this. A crazy lady and her cheating husband get a new house upon crazy lady's discharge from the crazy ward of the crazy place. It's a real fixer-upper, so they hire some carpenters and contractors to, fix it up.
Hey guys, you want to give me a hand with the, scaffolding? You're an idiot. Okay, so I'm an idiot, so great.
So give me a goddamn cigarette, idiot.
Oh, geez, sorry. I only got 11 left.
Only 11. Nice guy.
Nice dickhead.
Guys, back to work, huh?
Break, boss.
Listen, you've been on a break for the last half hour. It doesn't look good. Come on.
Hey, one more smoke, huh?
Back to work. Come on. Get going. Now.
Wow, what a riveting Canadians take a work break scene. Late at night, the crazy lady hears some continued carpentering going on and sets out to investigate. She finds Wings Hauser doing some work and thinks nothing of it. Sure, 3 a.m., Wings Hauser is in your house making noise, no big deal. Back to bed. Later, she's accosted by another fine quality construction worker, and 25 minutes into this movie, it finally decided to show us that it might be a horror movie. Except...
Keep your hands to yourself, aren't you, son? Best get some rest. I'll man these things.
I mean, just what the fuck are you even doing here, movie? A guy gets his arms sawed off and doesn't react? He's just like, bummer dude, and the lady is like, huh, that's unusual. I know she's crazy, but I'm not. Anyway, Wings Hauser turns out to be a ghost of a crazy dude who once lived in the house. She doesn't mind. Until an hour later in the movie when she decides she does mind. Boinks him on the head with a hammer, which doesn't faze him because he's dead. Has some cross words for him.
You're disgusting. You make me sick. You're filthy, and you're dead, and you smell bad.
And then everything ends with just one of the worst endings I've seen in some time. I know almost all horror movies end badly, but this one, wow. So, I admit that I didn't do much research on why what I'm about to talk about is a thing, but in my defense, I didn't want to. The Carpenter was released on Blu-ray, and there's an HD print available on streaming sites, but there's something quite off about it. Literally anytime there's violence or just something happening in the movie cuts to standard definition, at sometimes work print quality footage. I mean, almost any time something happens. Were the reels of people talking and nothing happening kept in a secure vault? And the reels containing scenes where something might happen were set on fire or something? Maybe this helps explain why that first kill is so completely shit, but what gives? I've seen something like this before with My Bloody Valentine, where the unrated gore is edited back into a much better looking print, but that was mere snippets of footage. In the case of The Carpenter, it's entire scenes. It's nuts. Did someone try to edit this down into some art house thing where a crazy lady and crazy Wings Hauser just hang out together in a rundown house? What's going on here? Despite ending with the dude being set on fire and chasing after our heroine, The Carpenter is trash. It's terrible, and it's also super duper Canadian.
What if you don't care? Why don't you just give him up?
But for you to come into my house and to drag your dirty little filth into my clean house, now that I care about. Your smart-ass little filth into my clean house. So please, get out, because it's not funny.
Look, I'm not bashing Canadian horror. Hell, Canadian horror in the 70s and the 80s is in some ways why we have the robust genre we have today. But this specific Canadian horror is trash, and I'm amazed the director survived it to have a fairly substantial career, albeit a Canadian one. Necromancer starts innocently enough, with Twin Peaks' Russ Tamblyn being a weirdo, unsurprisingly.
Professor Long at school, remember? You're angry. Huh?
A little.
A lot.
We then meet the titular Necromancer, who appears to work out of a garage in Encino, Encino Master. Later, a goofball gang of college kids breaks into the drama teacher's office to steal the answers to an exam. So, the drama class has a written exam? That seems weird. My drama class exam was to write a scene and perform it. Also, who takes drama and then cheats? Lots of questions here. When Julie, the teacher's aide, catches them, they decide to rape her. That's the most batshit insane escape plan ever. However, they know she won't report it to the school administrators because while searching for the exam, they also found a love letter she wrote to her weirdo drama teacher. It's the oddest series of events I've seen to set a movie into motion in quite some time. Later, the rapists give an explanation for their actions, which is unique.
Carl, it's 3 people's word against 1. There's a law about that, and the law will protect us. We broke the law. Hey, hang with me on this one, man. It takes a lot of courage to keep your life exciting, to dare to be different.
Thankfully, there's the necromancer, who advertises in the school paper, and Julie goes to see her to get her revenge for what was done to her. But of course, as these things go, be careful what you wish for, etc., etc. Oops, Merlin lost his monkey again. So, the way the necromancer kills people is that she has the victim appear to them, trick them into sexy times, and then the revenge monster, or demon or whatever, emerges and kills them, all while Julie sees it happen in what she thinks is a dream. What? So that's the first of 3 kills around the 42-minute mark. Then the second kill of 3 happens a mere 5 minutes later. What are we doing here, movie? I mean, you can ask that of this movie a lot, but seriously, what are we doing here, movie? Then when it's time for the third kill, the only one that's left is the one who is the least guilty of the 3. The structure of this is so odd. Boy, these effects are special. The overall oddness of Necromancer is rather entertaining. It just never gets to a place where I can call it good. Whether that be good or good-bad. It's something. The horrible ending definitely hurts it though. Why do 90% of all horror movies have to end so badly? Sequel hooks are the worst. I'd love someone to come along and undo the whole be careful what you wish for trope in storytelling because it's maddening. Want justice for something that's been wrongly done to you? Well, enjoy some ironic revenging that'll backfire against you because that's how things work. In horror movies in particular, give me a tale where something supernatural is quite satisfied getting their demon jollies by just doing a job as assigned, and then not turning on the person who initially approached them for help. Yeah, I know, lawful evil in horror sounds ridiculous, but it would be different at least. Hellraiser kinda did this. Predators, I guess. The Predator Honor Code is what I'm looking for. Predamancer. Let me hire a predator to get revenge for me. Then, once the job is done, I pay the predator in whatever currency they prefer, and they get to keep the spines as a bonus. I have no use for spines. That's evidence that could be used against me. Let the predator take those off planet where there's no jurisdiction. But leave me some kind of cool homing beacon so I can hire that predator again, because, I know a lot of people, and, I'm sorry, what were we talking about? Every year I try to get into some of the bigger Italian horror films, and each year I fail. This season I had a Fulci 3-disc set available to me that seemed to be worth trying out, but after watching City of the Living Dead without realizing that I'd already disliked it a couple of years ago, and then House by the Cemetery, which isn't much better, I felt like Fulci was going to be a director whose movies weren't ever going to speak to me. But then came the third movie in the set.
I'm so proud of you. That's it, you're such a good girl.
I wish I could be as excited as this guy is about his dog fetching things.
Strangest voice I ever heard. Sort of like a duck.
Like a duck.
Quack, quack, quack. Just like that. Not that he said quack, quack, quack. But that was a tone. And he made an appointment to meet her. Stupid. Is that all you can think of?
Okay, wait, the killer literally quacks? He makes duck noises? Is this a parody? What? The violence of the attack that follows is just obnoxious, but that's par for the course for the Fulci movies I've seen so far. Hope you're a depraved fuck because he's speaking directly to you with the gore.
So what's the good news?
He used a blade. He stuck it up her joy trail and slit her wide open.
Good lord, guy. Disgruntled Lieutenant Fred is on the case and he partners up with a college professor who knows things, blah blah blah, you know the drill. There's a lengthy segment involving a live sex show that ends with the killer making duck noises while stabbing a lady in the vagina with a broken bottle. On one hand, sure, that's something I've never seen before, but all this stuff is just gratuitous. Fulci has a real eye for making things as grotesque and unnecessary and unpleasant as possible. Also, it's clear that the killer just hates joy trails. The midsection of the film gets a bit bogged down with the introduction of a couple who have an arrangement where the wife goes out and has all kinds of sexual exploits, some of which she's into and some of which she's mildly horrified by. Then even more characters are introduced as a woman is attacked after getting off the subway, but then has a hallucination that her boyfriend followed her into a movie theater and attacked her as well. From there it seems pretty clear who the killer is going to turn out to be, but the film does a good job in the final act making it seem as though it could be potentially two other characters as well. I mean, these people have a framed Doug Henning print on their wall, so they're definitely candidates. While my rating might seem like The New York Ripper isn't much better than the other two movies in the set, it's actually very watchable aside from all the vagina stabbings. I'm a sucker for New York City movies from this time, and despite the investigation being rather rote, it was still compelling enough for me to see it through to the end. And speaking of the end, wow, does this movie ever pull an explanation out of total left field for the murderer's motivations. Also, I have to give it credit for Fulci reining in his obsession with zooming in on everyone's eyes at all times, like he does in the other two movies on this set. It's not gone completely, but it's toned way down, and I'm very grateful. There's a lot to unpack in 1983's Mausoleum, available on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome. Let's get right to it. A young girl runs away at her mother's funeral, straight into the waiting arms of a completely unsecured mausoleum, lit in spooky red-green colors. Some things happen. The end result of whatever that was is that she's unleashed a spooky monster. Uh-oh. Cut to the future, and young Susan is a lady. But her doctor is still very concerned about her mental state. Not enough to actually do anything more than just see her for regular appointments, but still, there's concern. Susan and her husband, Marjoe Gortner, go out for dinner, where poor Dan Haggerty can't catch a break.
What are you looking at?
Where?
Here.
Just looking at the dance floor.
You were looking at her, weren't you? And this is the last time you're going to do this to me. When you take me out, you look at me.
I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but you're always bitching about the same old shit.
There's some hot dancing and more Dan Haggerty getting in the way.
Come here.
Let go of me! Leave me alone!
And then, while leaving, Susan manages to destroy his toy car and burn him to a crisp. She's got spooky powers. Later, at home, Susan begins menacing the gardener with her breasts, after he menaces her with his inability to figure out shirts. It's worth mentioning that while Susan is a good-looking woman, like maybe Tanya Roberts' aunt or something, she's also just a lady. I'm not sure why every man in this thing is losing their mind trying to get a piece of her. So after a day of that dance, she finally has sex with the dude. Then she murders him. Well, that'll teach him. Also, I guess the film's tagline finally makes some sense.
I brought the estate papers you wanted.
Oh my God!
Oh no, the estate papers.
I can't help you now.
Hell yeah, demons love to rock. Eventually, the demon that's apparently been inside her since that day in the mausoleum starts to take over more and more, prompting Susan's husband to call her shrink. Because that's what you do when your wife starts literally demoning out. As her doc tries to help her, she demons out even more, which he notes as being odd.
What cursed demons?
As I was making a note about how this lady's boobs are like a character in this thing, they literally become a character in this thing. Like a porno King Ghidorah or something. This movie is wild, there's just so much of it I can't post because of reasons, but trust me, you need to see this. There's even a third act cat scare, which, fuck off, but I can't even be mad at this point. Mausoleum is a trip. Also, the film was literally a mafia tax dodge, and while I'm not endorsing such endeavors, at least the producers were like, hey, load this movie up with some crazy shit. I should also mention that Aunt Esther from Sanford & Son is in this, briefly, as the family housekeeper, and she's terrific.
Promises, promises. That's all they ever do is promise. Just promise all the time. That fool, I can't get him to see nothing. There's some strange shit going on in this house, and I know damn well it is.
As I've said before, a lot of the Vinegar Syndrome stuff to me is a bit dodgy, but when they come across one that's right up my alley, boy is it a home run, and Mausoleum is a trip. Atlanta has a rat problem. But don't worry, because Return of the Living Dead's Miguel Nunez is on the case. He's an exterminator who takes an after-hours call and gets more than what he bargained for, as he's eventually swarmed and consumed by an army of rats. Now, let's break this down for a second. First of all, the movie promises rat vision, which, okay, I'm on board with that. However, that's actually part of a bigger problem that'll permeate through the rest of the film. There are these digital editing effects that low-budget movies tended to suffer from around this time, and they're always terrible, and in this case, they're seemingly being applied at random. Meanwhile, a local slumlord has been sentenced to 30 days at his worst property, which I guess became a thing after the big Joe Pesci hit The Super. In the basement of this building is where our main character Max and his brother Courtney live. But more importantly, Ice-T is here as the slumlord's enforcer, collecting rent from the poor tenants.
It's your worst nightmare.
Stop it, Joey!
Goddamn dog.
Mean people don't taste good in it.
Y'all got the money.
You know you made our due date a day before our Social Security checks arrive, just so you can collect a late fee every month. We've been living in this building over 35 years, and we ain't going nowhere.
You ain't going nowhere. You think this is a game? You've been late for rent every month for 35 years. Let me tell you something. If you do not have the money by tomorrow, y'all gonna be outdoors. Try that pitching tents around this motherfucker, okay? I don't bullshit. This is my job, man. I finally got a job. I'm not fucking up.
Max makes friends with one of the many rats that lives in the building after rescuing it from a rat trap. He names it Tara, which was the original name of the film until someone in marketing had an idea. Life is then very tough for everyone in the building for the next hour of the movie until after a very specific series of tragedies, Max commands his rat friends to exact revenge. Something tells me this did not start life as a killer rat movie, or if it did, it was enhanced in post with that opening scene and some other random gratuitousness, because the bulk of this is just a life sucks in this apartment building slice of life experience. If you're creeped out by rats being on people, there's a bit of that here, but the bulk of the more terrifying bits are all CG rats. It's a film that's lost in any genre you try to put it in, and as I said, the editing effects are atrocious. Without random bits of Ice-T here and there, Hood Rat would be a completely forgettable experience. Now, here's another rat movie, but one where the film's sense of style actually makes the movie instead of impairing it. 1984's Rats: Night of Terror from prolific Italian director Bruno Mattei features an opening crawl that has a lot to unpack, but I'll simplify. It's after the apocalypse, and there's two groups. The super smart people who stayed underground, and the dumbass primitives who went up to the surface to wander around. But I'll simplify it even further. It's after the apocalypse, and there's this fabulous biker gang. I mean, look at these people. You've got Mohawk Guy, Sexy Zorro, they've got weird guns, they're all just weirdo fabulous. The group starts scouting this building and finds a huge cache of food and supplies. Normal scavengers after finding a windfall like this would load up those trucks they parked outside and move on. But for some reason they stay, for a night of terror.
Let's see.
I'll make you pregnant. If you can make that thing work.
What? This is very much a biker movie of the 60s and 70s at its core, which isn't a compliment. You've got this group of assholes taking control of a location, touching everything, smashing everything, being rapey and weird, all the usual stuff. Throw in the post-apocalyptic setting and you've got something you've probably seen a dozen times or so now. But then there's the rats. This place is absolutely infested with rats. They're everywhere and they're scheming. Although the scheme usually ends up being load everyone up into a big bucket and then have a crew member dump that bucket onto a cast member's head. Rat's Night of Terror isn't for the squeamish, but if you're able to survive the rat attack scenes, there's a lot of fun to be had here. That Italian goofiness is here, from the fantastic dubbing, to the style, to the general WTF-ness of everything that's happening. These films always seem to exist in another universe.
You can save us if you hurry!
I'm sorry, what's happening here? One thing you're not going to see in the end credits is any kind of disclaimer that no animals were harmed during the making of this film. Shot after shot features actual rats being thrown, stepped on, etc. I mean, if I ever saw a rat, I'd absolutely murder it dead, but I wouldn't record it for the entertainment of others either, so just be prepared for that. Something you're not going to be prepared for is the ending, which, while bad, is one of the greatest, dumbest things you'll ever see. A laugh-out-loud moment if there ever was one, and it's yet another thing that makes me recommend Rat's Night of Terror. Sometimes you think you know what you're getting into when you start a movie. In the case of 1981's The Pit, there's really nothing that'll prepare you for what's about to happen. The poster gives you an idea, so does the synopsis, but what you actually get? Holy smokes. So there's this 12-year-old kid, Jamie. He's troubled. At first you think it's because he's being bullied, which he is. Everyone in town is pretty terrible towards him.
Why don't you go back where you came from, funny person? If I see you near my bike again, I'll tell your father, and it'll be too bad for you. They'll take you away.
Like this clearly racist child, for example. She's pretty terrible. Also this.
I was wondering if I could join your club and...
That punch in the face seemed a bit out of line based on the evidence currently on hand. This does not excuse his actual behavior though, which is the bigger problem. In short, he's a goddamned weirdo and an incel in training. Here's an early example. He's stolen a nude photography book from the library, and because he's obsessed with the librarian, he cuts out a picture from the book, glues a photo of the librarian on top of it, and sends it to her. He then spies on her and gets mad when she tears it up in disgust. Jamie's parents decide to go out of town to get away from their demon child, and so they hire a babysitter/housekeeper to watch over things while they're away. Jamie's had a lot of babysitters who claim to be trained to deal with special kids, but they never last. However, this time it seems as though things are different, as Sandy seems to have the patience of a saint, even as Jamie spies on her while she sleeps, and takes showers, and steals from her.
But she's got a boyfriend. Only, he isn't her real boyfriend. He's just a friend. That's all. Just a friend. Well then, she's just what we've been waiting for, isn't she?
Oh god, what? Yeah, Jamie's got serious issues. He thinks his teddy bear is talking to him too. Jamie's obsession with the librarian continues in just about the most supremely evil way possible. He calls her and plays a recording saying her niece has been kidnapped, and to get her back she must disrobe in front of her window, where he's hiding so he can take photos of her. Seriously, this kid is a goddamn menace. Okay, now wait a minute. The kid is insane and his teddy bear is actually alive / possessed by something? We're still not even to what this movie is actually about. Eventually, Jamie tells Sandy that he's found a pit in the woods, and at the bottom of this pit live a group of creatures he calls Trollocs. She's like, yeah, whatever, kid, that's nice, I'm sure you believe that, it's good to believe things. But as it turns out, Jamie has actually found a pit with a bunch of creatures living inside, who all look like the monster from Big Trouble in Little China. The thing is about this movie, though, is that I wouldn't even put No's location of a pit full of monsters on Jamie's top 10 list of serious issues. Not yet, anyway. But then Jamie decides the creatures are hungry and he must feed them. After exhausting both his money and the money he steals from Sandy at the butcher's shop, he comes to the conclusion that he has no choice but to start throwing his enemies into the pit and complete his transition into Earth's worst supervillain. And so he does. The film becomes a whimsical murder spree as Jamie lures his enemies to their death. This score would suggest it's all pretty wacky. It is not. On one hand, the musical score for this film was reportedly written in 3 days. On the other hand, this is not wacky. It comes time for Sandy to check out the pit for herself, and while Jamie doesn't push her in, she does end up falling in, and that's it for Sandy. And I am not a fan of this plot development, not at all. Neither is Jamie, as it turns out, and he ends up just giving up on everything, so for his final act of pure evil, he gives the Trollocs a rope so they can climb out and murder whatever they want. And then the last 10 to 15 minutes is exactly that. Random people we've never seen before get mauled and eaten by the monsters, until a Night of the Living Dead posse forms and hunts the things down. The movie then remembers that we need a payoff to the Jamie character, which we get, but it's more of a head-scratcher than anything else. Satisfying, sure, but also baffling. I'm recommending The Pit as something you need to see, even though I'm not sure I'm saying I enjoyed it. It's a thing. It's watchable in a very mouth-agape, what the fuck is this movie kind of way. It does have some issues. The scene involving Jamie getting punched in the face and then luring that kid into the pit is shown twice in its entirety, both at the very beginning of the film and again in the proper timeline, which seems like a case of the distributor saying, we need something horror to happen in the first reel of this movie. Also, again, I am not on board with Sandy getting offed. That is a major bummer, and from that point on, the movie just becomes something else entirely. Overall, it's such a weird thing, but that's what makes it so watchable. Seek it out and prepare to cringe. Trish Van Devere is a lady with some stress. Hey, join the club, lady. She leaves San Francisco to spend the summer at a family home she's inherited in small-town USA. Along the way, she gets into an accident with the hearse, but it drives off, leaving her with a desire to speak to that driver's manager. But okay, spooky hearse got the premise. She starts settling into the house, but as it turns out, the house is spooky too. So now I'm confused. Is hearse German for house or something? Das Hearse? Everyone in town is an absolute dick to her, including lawyer Joseph Cotton, whose character should have been kicked in the junk after their very first meeting. And later there's super pervy Shooter McGavin, who really doesn't have anything to do in the movie except be super pervy. She actually tolerates quite a lot from this piece of shit town along the way, and really should have considered burning it all down to the ground sometime within her first 48 hours there. Repairs start on the house, and oh shit, Dennis Quaid!
Telephone company lady.
Good, I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, Mr. Pritchard, he called yesterday.
Oh, come on in. I thought if you called yesterday, it would have taken you a month to get here. Oh, you don't happen to have one of those pretty powder blue princess models? No.
Okay, I need to talk about this because it's such a weird thing. That's Dennis Quaid. That's very young Dennis Quaid with a mustache. As you saw, he has a brief speaking role, and this is his only scene in the movie. Like Christopher McDonald, he has absolutely nothing to do with the plot whatsoever, but that's him. He's in this. He's not listed in the opening credits, fine, sure, that happens. He's also not listed in the closing credits, which is really weird considering it's a speaking role, but again, fine. Then come to find out that someone has taken the Men in Black thingy to the internet in this case, because this is not listed on his IMDb filmography, anywhere on the IMDb page for this film, or on Wikipedia. Nothing, nada. And it's not like this Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray is the only unearthing of this Crown International film. It's been making appearances on DVD as far back as 2005, maybe even earlier. You mean to tell me no one has updated the IMDb with this information? Strangers have updated my IMDb page, and I shouldn't even have a page. So I tried to fix it myself, and long story short, it's impossible to get the IMDb robots to update anything. I sent them a link to the scene and everything, and each and every time the robots would deny the new information. There's a conspiracy here to keep Dennis Quaid's name away from this motion picture, and I'm gonna blow the whole thing wide open, you'll see. Anyway, so this woman left the big city to escape two problems, a recent divorce and the death of her mother. Now she has non-stop problems, including a haunted house, a haunted hearse, and more random-ass encounters with the world's worst townspeople.
Miss Hardy, please.
Oh, you scared the hell out of me.
I should probably take that as a compliment.
Literally anywhere she goes or anything she does ends up being the worst moment of her day, and it's clear there's something up to where the entire town save one teenager wants her to leave. She's also continually menaced by the hearse wherever she goes. She finally meets a local man who isn't being a jerk to her, although he very much is an obvious weirdo to the audience, and she seems completely oblivious to this. They become lovers. Okay, I want some feedback from you in the comments section on this shot that's coming up. Okay, how'd they do that? Obviously today the screen is digital and it's easy to pull that off, but how'd they do that here? Is the screen really like a piece of nylon that immediately crumpled when the cameraman entered through the opening in the door? I rewound this bit several times when I first watched the film, it's really neat. So she finds out that her new lover is a ghost, and also is the ghost driver of the hearse, but has been using a ghost disguise to fool her, and I have a million questions about all this. I mean, she had sex with a ghost? And the ghost can wear disguises? And then this is the thing that convinces her to leave? I mean, yeah, you fuck a ghost, it might break your brain, but all the previous weirdness was totally acceptable? This is what does the trick? Anyway, she manages to kill the ghost in a traffic accident, and that's literally that. Watchable? Yes. But does the hearse make any sense or come together at all? No. And I'm still peeved about the Dennis Quaid thing. Please come sign my online petition to force the IMDb to do my bidding. Strays originally aired as a USA Network movie in December 1991. Merry Christmas, everyone. The credits reveal that this fine motion picture we're about to enjoy was written by Sean Cassidy. Yes, this Sean Cassidy. It's his first script. Well, Sean, I think I love you. Okay, I know that's David Cassidy, whatever. We start with an old lady who feeds stray cats, as old ladies tend to do. But she feeds a lot of stray cats, like a lot. And so you figure based on the title that this massive army of stray cats is going to turn on her, and that'll be our movie. Nope, she hears something demonic, looks up, and that's the end of this old lady.
What's the matter, babies?
It's at this point that I made a note that I desperately hoped this was going to be about a giant 2 stories tall cat, or that all the strays are merging into some kind of Voltron cat. I mean, at this point it wasn't out of the realm of possibility, or so I thought. The film then begins proper as Claudia Christian sells the old lady's house to the cast of 30-something.
The woman who passed away recently. I guess the heirs needed the cash.
Well, it does have a certain charm in an Amityville kind of way.
Oh, please.
Yes, listen to Poindexter, get out of there, there's a giant murder cat waiting to cat murder you. Later, as the family returns from errands, a cat tries to murder their car.
I'm picking up the remaining.
Shortly thereafter, you begin to realize that this isn't a giant critterball murder cat, but instead one very angry, very mouthy cat that all the other stray cats obey. And while I was disappointed in that reveal, I was still interested to see where this was going to go. So, to condense some of the midsection of this movie, Timothy Busfield is allergic to cats and has been feeling the effects ever since moving in, but had no idea why. Claudia Christian, his sister-in-law, is one of his divorce law clients and has been getting a little friendly with him, leading to marital strife between him and wife Kathleen Quinlan. When she finds a cat and its kitten in the attic, she decides to keep it in order to spite Busfield in one of the biggest dick moves I've seen since Boogie Nights. The evil mouthy cat spies on the couple and overhears this particular argument and is all like, yes, meow meow, marital strife, I can use this, meow meow. And then starts using psychological warfare against Busfield, which is goddamn hilarious. The family has the cutest dog, which sadly means it's going to get wrecked by the murder cat, and of course it gets wrecked by the murder cat. And when they call in the vet to help them out, because their car is still toast thanks to one of the murder cat's minions, we're introduced to the second member of the cast who is possessed by the alien in The Hidden. The third act of the film basically takes place over the course of one single evening, as the mom and child are trapped inside the house and menaced by the cats. It becomes Shakma, but with cats, and it's freaking nuts. When Busfield is finally able to make it home, he has a final battle with the murder cat that, well, it sure is something. I was enjoying this nonsense up until that point, but then there are at least 2 or 3 things during the final sequence that are stupid great. This movie rules. If you go look at reviews for Strays, a lot of people are like, oh my god, this is the stupidest shit. But I don't know who broke them, because Strays is a lot of fun. And aside from the hijinks of the finale, the thing I like most about Strays is how every single little plot detail manages to pay off. The kid with entirely too much hair hides in a box earlier, and so when Claudia Christian goes to look for her, she has no reason to think that the cat that's about to murder her from that box isn't the hairy child. The phone repair guy not realizing that the damage to the home's phone lines is so extensive leads to the family car getting wrecked, leads to the tow truck towing away the phone repair guy's truck, and no one ever realizes he's gone missing because he was leaving straight from there to go to a fishing trip. I mean, all the bases are covered here and then some. Everything here has a setup that makes sense, with the exception of the murder cats, but whatever, cats are evil, it's not a stretch.